We're live, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, Inuit, Cree, and Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. My name is Cynthia Stevens. I'll be chairing the panel today. Joining me this morning from the Board of Revision are Diane Knight and Ian Mann. Our secretary this morning is Crystal Harland, and our assessor is Marina Tenuara. We'll be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property be addressed with each applicant. Following the swearing in, we will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all of the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after the applications have been heard, after all the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed and recorded and will be part of the public record. We will be hearing item number 1 on our docket today. Mrs. Harlan, please affirm the assessor's and applicant's testimony.
Yes, Madam Chair. Madam Assessor, would you please stand? Would you please state your full name?
Morena Vandekateva.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please be seated. Mr. Applicant, would you please stand?
Thank you.
Would you please state your full name?
Wesley Van Bruggen.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do, thank you.
Thank you. Please be seated.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So before we proceed, I'm going to confirm that we're dealing with assessed value today only.
That's correct.
Correct. Okay, thank you very much. I guess we can proceed then. So the first item only item on the agenda is 1555 Regent Avenue. And Ms. Tenuara, if you would like to read it into the roll and give us your presentation, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. File number 25-549. Roll number 090110473150. Property address 1555 Regent Avenue West. Property owner Kildonan Place. This valuation is the supplementary assessment for 2025. This is not the original valuation for 2025. We have signed the 15-1 agreement for the 2025 value. So usually we maintain the 15-1 value until the 2027 reassessment year. That's the usual process. Even though there is a new construction or something, it's a small amount of value increase, we usually maintain the valuation unless owner change their mind, owner wants to appeal the property. In this case, for owner appeal for 2026 valuation, for the 2026, because we did not issue a supplementary for effective January 1st, 2025, because we wanted to honor our 15-1 agreement. And we decided to maintain the valuation until 2027. When the owner appealed for 2026, we decided to issue a supplementary assessment because we don't have any reason to hold the valuation increase fiscal change until 2027 reassessment year because owner opened the appeal for 2026. So we issued the supplementary assessment for 2020 effective January 1st, 2025. Reason Scotiabank, this is the physical change. Explaining the physical change is the new construction of Scotiabank on site on Kildonan Place. When we issue the supplementary assessment for this kind of scenario, already a signed 15-1 agreement, division by agreement, we usually don't change so many things. We manage the what we agreed parameters because we already agreed with owner. Whoever the agent signed the 15-1 agreement, we signed the agreement with on behalf of owner. Owner agreed to the value. So we maintain the valuation. Most of the parameters we maintain. We maintain the rental rates, but I also applied some rental rate. We agreed for the BA assessment when we issued the supplementary assessment. We went through all of those parameters, all of the rental rates, everything before we issued the supplementary assessment. I wanted to give you a little bit of background about this supplementary assessment because it's a complex situation. We usually don't issue a supplementary assessment when we sign the revision by agreement. Most of the time, if it's the change is a small percentage of increase of value, we hold it for next year. So that's the background. Then I will go through my presentation, usual presentation. The property is a property classified as a regional shopping center. You everyone know it's a regional shopping center. We have regional shopping centers. Kildonan Place classified as a regional shopping center. It was built in 1980 to 2025 period because it's not the one-time build. It's at the buildings throughout the time period. Effective age, we used 1980 to 2025. 2025 is the last built one for the Scotiabank. This property has plan area of gross floor area is 521,266. Leasable area is 420,147. My page number 2. Those are a little bit of snapshot about the already leases in place for the regional shopping center. You can see rent vary. And also you can see some kiosk rents are there, small CRO rents are there, bigger units rents are there. You can see about the rent variation there. I'm not reading all the rents because you will see those rents many places. Those are the reflection of rents. And also some rents are semi-gross rent. Also some rents are motivated rent because they have some agreement with some tenants about rental rates. Those are not the market rents, they agree. They have licensee agreement or some kind of agreement. They pay very low rates to be in the mall. So you can see all of those rents here. Not all the rents, some of the snapshot of rental rates. Page number 2, location map. You all know it's located in Region Avenue. And page number 2, it's a picture. Page number 5 is the pictures. 4, 5 map are the pictures. And also you can see when they build the regional shopping center, there are some additional land and all of those are parking. Page number 6 is a picture of the outside of the property. Page number 7, again, it's a picture of outside. That shopping center has the strip mall, that's the 3 CRU built outside. That's the first picture on page number 7, that's 3 CRU showing. All the pictures are Google pictures. I have inspected many times, but this is the pictures from Google View. Pictures, page number 8, page number 9, those are the interior pictures. Page number 10, interior, page number 11, that's the newly built Cineplex Cineplex Junction movie theater. That's a conversion of the CS space converted to 2 units. One is the Save On Food, the other one is the Cineplex. It's a brand new, they pre-model, redemised and remodeled and built newly. Those are the pictures. Page number 12, those are the rent comparables. I bring the rent comparables here to show the other regional shopping centers, what they pay as a market rate. Because those rental rates not within the KP mall, not the Kelvin Place malls, those are the rental rates what the other regional shopping centers pay. The first page, most of the first few tenants from the Polo Park, you can see those rents vary. Highest rent, the highest rent you can see $127. It is for People's Jewelry Store. It's a 1,638 square feet, smaller size CRU. That's the highest rent. And also you can see Urban Planet, which is the higher, bigger CRU, which is 24,838 square feet CRU, paid $20.50 as a market rent. Then when I move to Sterling Lion Park, Sterling Lion, which is the outlet mall, the bottom three, you can pay Sterling Lion rents a little bit lower than the Polo Park because it's a hierarchy of the shopping center. They follow the tenant pay higher rents on the most prestigious shopping centers, regional shopping centers than the other ones. Sterling Lion Parkway, it's an outlet mall. Outlet mall rents are a little bit lower, and you will see 7,008 square feet, bigger store, pay $29.50 as a rent. It's a Calvin Klein. The other page, I have first 3 tenants from the outlet mall. Then I moved to St. Vital Mall. St. Vital Mall has higher rents again. Then you will see St. Vital Mall has mall Sunglass Hut pay $105 per square feet for 685 square feet unit. Those are the model rents. Those are the market rents we found in the marketplace. It's a regional shopping center within the city of Winnipeg. Then last one is the Grand Park Shopping Center. It's a small CRU. It's a 456 square feet CRU, paying $62 per square feet. Those are the market overview over the rent comparables. I need to bring, because we need to bring the rent comparables from the similar properties, similar regional shopping centers. Those are not 100% similar, but within the Winnipeg, and they have their own characteristics on this regional shopping centers. And my page number 14, it's a supermarket rent, because supermarket is not all the regional shopping centers have supermarkets. Supermarket rents coming from within city of Winnipeg and other places. You can see supermarket rents range from $18 to $21.88. The supermarket rates are higher than Save On Food. These rent comparables to compare the rent for the Save On Food, because Save On Food is a supermarket. The bottom is a bank comparables, because it's a Scotia Bank. You will see all of the banks. Those are the new reasonably new leases. The prints pay $55 to $30. Some last 3 banks are not in the standalone banks. Those are little lower side rents because are not the standalone. Upper ones are standalone. TD Bank is also standalone, but it's not all by itself. It's attached with the other unit, but it's It is not inside the polo park, but it's outside the polo park, but attached with the different unit. It's a similar size unit. Those are my rent comparables from the marketplace, in marketplace, and I'm moving to page number 15. Additional land, excess land, because KP, we use additional land. We add the additional land to the valuation. So that's why I'm moving to page number 15 for additional land. So these two pictures are pictometry views. You will see what is the total additional land amount. After we reducing some area for the recreation, landscaping and all of those addition. After we removing, we are not using exact area. We allow some place for the public and we allow some place for the beauty and the landscape. Then you can see yellow square, yellow lines, yellow area is the additional land area. When we add total land area, land area should be 283,245 square feet. If we use the entire land area, we do not use the entire land area because we only use the 10% of additional land. Be aware about the other costs associated with the developing the additional land. We are not using entire land area. We only use additional land area as 222,585. Even though we have a capability to use 283,245 altogether, all the land area, but we use a smaller land area for the valuation because we kind of consider all the costs associated with development of additional land area. That's why we use the lower land area. So if I explain more about those ones, I have ability to use the 3,234,000 to add to the income value. I do not add that much of value. I only add 2,543,000, not entire amount for the additional land value. We already consider all the costs associated with the development of additional land. So that's the story about the additional land. Then I'm moving to land comparables. Those are the land comparables in the page number 16. Those are the land rates. I'm showing those land rates to support my land rates. Land rates we use as $11.42 to calculate additional land value. But you will see page number 16, all of those land sales are higher than $11.42. Our rental rates are lower and we have well-supported land rates we use for that calculating additional land value. Page number 17. From page number 17, that's the valuation. This valuation is not 100% model driven valuation because we already considered so many changes when we signed the 15-1 agreement. So I'm kind of following same kind of procedures and cap rate is already adjusted. Original model cap rate is lower, but we already adjusted to 6.25. This is the bank valuation. Bank is brand new, newly built. It's open for occupancy in end of 2024. We at the building as of January 1st, 2025. Size of the bank is 5,414 and rents we use $38.80. Well supported with the market net rents. And our valuation for the bank, using all the model parameters, we use the model parameters as the shortfall, vacancy, and adjusted cap rate. Adjusted cap rate is 6.25. Its cap rate is increased here. So it's a 3,181,000 is the bank valuation. And you will see the pictures of the permits, my bank permits in page attached is in brief, is page number 33, page number 34, 35. Those are the bank pictures for the bank construction. Kochia Bank. I just attached those on to show that's the new construction, but it's all the area and everything as used as the permits. Page number 18, from 18 to page number 21, those are the regional shopping center mall portion valuation. Most of the rents are model driven. Some rents already negotiated. Example, I will give the example for premise ID 8999 in page number 18. That's the C2 standard finish, 1,507 unit size premise. This is the premise used by management. Primaries use this premise for the management office. Our original valuation for 15-1 agreement, we use $41.48. But MNP appealed for the Board of Revision. We came into agreement for the desk office space, $28.50 will be the appropriate rent for use for that office. Then when I issue the supplementary valuation, I use that $28.50 for the valuation. I don't use the $41.48 as our original valuation. I use the $28.50 as the already negotiated valuation. So it's a one example of how much we care about this valuation when we issue the supplementary assessment. Also, storage and mezzanine, C6, you can see premise ID 9010, storage mezzanine, which is 25,973 square feet storage, which is the former theater. When the movie theater moved to new Cineplex Junction unit, this became vacant. But owner has a plan to demolish this one, and also owner used this one as a storage. The $6 we all agree. Even I know agents brief, they use the $6 per square feet to calculate the final value. And we agreed for the previous agreement, we use the $6. I'm still using $6. It's an example for the storage unit. And also movie theater. Movie theater, when we initial negotiations, agents found there is a tiny discrepancy on the size. It's already corrected when we issued the supplementary assessment. Those kind of adjustments we made already. And most of those parameters, most of the rents are modeled with the combination of already negotiated rents. And for the entire KP Mall, only 5 properties appeal for the BA. None of the other tenants appeal for the BA. Only 5 properties appeal for the BA. We consider some of the adjustments here. One of those tenants are office space. We adjusted here. And now I'm moving to vacancy rate. We use a 5% vacancy rate because rent rolls, I'm moving to my rent rolls. Rent roll, first page of rent roll. Page number 40, you can see all the rent vacant units listed there. Altogether, this entire out of this, all the vacant spaces, 25,973, which is used as the storage unit. They put as here as the vacancy space. When I remove that 25,973 square feet. It's left with somewhere 8,000 square feet as a vacant unit, vacant space. So 5% of vacancy is more than enough for reflect the vacancy because it's the 25,000. The two reasons for 25,000 storage area, it used as a storage currently it's used as a storage unit, and also tentative plan, it's not a tentative plan, their plan is to demolish in the future. And that area, we cannot consider, and they are not actually leasing to lease that space, and if they all don't accept this is a temporary storage, will demolish in the future. We don't consider that 25,000 square feet is this vacant space, and 5% is vacancy is very reasonable, fair number to calculate the vacancy rate on mall portion. Shortfall rate. Then I wanted to explain why the mall shortfall is $30 per square feet. You can see all the other shortfall for the other units. It's a shortfall is higher, lower, $8, $6, $6.50. But mall shortfall is $30 per square feet. Why is that? Because we recognize mall needs additional expenses to manage a mall, because we are City of Winnipeg very strict on expenses. We don't change the expenses. Our expenses is 3%. No matter what it is, expenses ratio we use for 3% expenses. But we adjust the shortfall rate accordingly. When we adjust the shortfall rate instead of expense rate, we issue the shortfall rate is $30 per square feet. $30 per square feet shortfall is the additional expense amount we address to cover additional expenses related to mall. That's the mall shortfall is $30. So those are recognized previously. And additional land value, as I explained, we did not add the 3 million land value. We only add the 2,543,000 as additional land value. Our mall valuation now concluded. I'm concluding mall portion valuation will be 145,050,000. Sorry. So page number 22 is a supermarket, right? Supermarket. This is the Save On Food located. That's this part of the CS, previously called CS. CS divided to two units. One is the Cineplex, the other one is the Save On. This is the Save On. Save On has the entrance from outside. Even though mall is closed, people can come and go for the Save On Food, same as the movie theater. It's not affected by the mall closure time or anything. It's the Save On Food. It's a supermarket. We use the supermarket total usable area is 41,580, but I found out the actual lease area is higher than the 41,580, but I did not adjust that one because we follow the same area, and we use the $17.50 per square feet. Those are the model-driven. I think those are the model-driven rents. But actually, Save On Food paying $23.50, somewhere $23 as a rental rate for the model Save On Food. This is actually lower value valuation, because if I add the correct leasable area and what they're actually paying, valuation will be so much higher. But we honor the previous agreement because it's a no change in there. No, they didn't appeal for the BA. No change. We honor the previously agreed everything. It is as it is, supermarket rental rates. rental rates, we use $17.50. Shortfall is $6.50. You will see the difference in the shortfall, the model portion, mall portion, and the supermarket portion. Here is the $6.50. Vacancy loss is 4%. It's lower than the mall portion. Mall we allowing 5%. Here is a 4% because Save on Food fully occupied. It's so cap rate, original cap rate is so much lower than 6.5. I would say it's lower than 6%. But we agreed 6.5% with the owner when we signed the original agreement. We honor those funds and we keep it as it is. And the valuation for the Save on Food supermarket is $10,258,000. So I'm moving to strip mall, page number 23. That's the standalone 4 CRU unit. So our rental rates are all model driven. All the rental rates are lower than what the actual rental rates are. And vacancy rate is 4%. None of units are vacant right now. Shortfall is $9 per square feet because they don't need $30 per square feet for the additional expenses. Cap rate is 6.5 as agreed. Honor the original 15-1 agreement. Cap rate is lower than 6%, the original marketable cap rate. Then I'm asking strip mall valuation, honor everything is $3,846,000 would be appropriate. So page number 24, it's a summary, what I talked before. That's the valuation summary. And you can see we have 4 income streams. We use 6.5 for the 3 income streams, except the bank. Bank income stream has a cap rate is 6.25. The rest of those on 6.5 cap rate. Overall cap rate, well, calculated 6.5. You can see first column, you can see our overall cap rate is 6.5%. And shortfall rate, overall shortfall rate, this is just the presentation purpose only. You will see shortfall is different income stream to income stream, $27.42. Then as valuation estimation, estimated market value is $162,335,000 here. That's the valuation. For the supplementary value, that's the valuation we are asking to confirm. Now I'm going a little bit detail for page number 25. I put a little bit detail about the original model rent versus actual rents because I want to show actual model rents are not unfair. Its model rent is very fair rents. You can see page number 25. I have a column. You can see the model rent per square feet column and actual rent per square feet column. I don't use gross rent reported. I don't use any of the motivate rent. I already knew about the story. I only use net rents here. I pick all the net rents reported in the rent roll. You can see model rent column. It's very consistent, but based on the size factor, it goes a little bit up and down from the rental rates. The actual rent column, you will see is it's vary. Example, Arden rent, the very first one, Arden rents, model rents, we use $28.24. The actual rents is $80. They pay lower rents. Then when you go except those ones, other rents, you will see kind of coordination with the rental rates. The some rents, our 39 rent area, they most of the time owner collected 47 rents, 45, 42, 50, 60 rents. It's a vary based on the size, based on where they actually locate in within the mall, rent variation, they have the negotiation power. If it's a very, if the unit located in the very close to the entrance, very desirable location, they have more power to negotiate and get higher rental rates. But model does not do those kind of very tiny detail. It's the size is range 1,000 to 2,000. We get the somewhat similar rental rates up and down. It goes up and down based on the size. Page number 26, you will see the summary. You will see the average model rent is $39 per cent, $39.03 per square feet. Actual rent average is $44.63. I use all the entire tenant count is 83. I use 44 tenants for this analysis. You will see actual model rent. Model rents is lower than actual rents based on the net rents reported. And when I do the I have some kind of summary for the size of the tenant. Give me 1 second, please. That's okay, never mind about that. When I'm going to move to page number 26, those are the C3 food court tenants. You can see food court tenants, the total food court tenants are 9 food court tenants are there. Net rent reported food court tenants, 7 tenants were reported as a net rents. 2 tenants are special lease tenants. I don't use that special lease paid tenants for the calculation. Then average model rents for the food court tenant is $209.75. Actual average rent for the food court tenant and $226.18. Those are the summary for the food court tenant. Then regional shopping center has a kiosk too, kiosk location too. Food court is different from the kiosk. Kiosks are the small units located in the corridors and those ones. There's most of the time telephone booths and telephone tenants and those kind of tenants, small tenants. You can see lease sizes are vary. Smallest kiosk is 50 square feet, but it is right now vacant. Vacant in our system. You will see the rental rates, model rates. We use $232 to $267 because $267 is higher rent because of the smaller units. You can see the range of rents. But you will see actual rents they are paying. The lowest rent, Booster Juice pay $120. The highest rent, Cellular Care pay $400 per square feet. So the actual rent, average actual rent is $321.25. Average model rent is $241. You can see the difference. Our model rate is consistent. It's the 241. It's the lower rate we use. Then I move to cinema. Cinema theater lease area corrected to reflect the lease amount. 34,802 is the lease area. $21. It is already negotiated agreed rent. That's the actual rents they pay. We agreed to $21 rent. We even though negotiate, when we do the original negotiation, we negotiate with the agent represent the Cineplex. They all agreed to $21 is the market rents for the Cineplex. We use $21. for the final valuation. Anchor tenant, Save On Food. As I mentioned before, we use 41,580 as a leasable area. Lease area reported, you can see my table, last column is the lease area reported is 43,434. We are a little bit lower than this kind of bigger valuation, this 2,000 square feet. We'll correct in the next reassessment, but we honor the agreement. We previously used area, and model rent is lower than actual net rent. Actual net rent is $23.50. Our model rate is $17.50. That's why I mentioned our supermarket calculation is below assets than the market level. It should be higher, but we will let it go for this cycle. Then I'm moving to page 28. That's the storage mezzanine calculation. You can see the lease areas. Lease areas are smaller. Those are the storage units. Some tenants rent a storage unit because they need additional space to store some their stuff, goods. They lease the storage units. This is the storage units, and it is reported in the rent roll. These sizes smaller units. Our model rent or starting $29 going up to $24. It's a very small within the small limit. And they are collecting approximately $42 and those kind of 40 range rental rates. You will see model rents for the storage units. We used $33.50 per square feet. Actual storage rent are $40, but our model rents are lower. Our rents are lower, and we use that's the average rents. And also some tenants I did not include for above analysis. Some tenants those are bigger tenants. They lease a bigger area. Marshall's are there. Sketches. Marshall lease area is 45,079 square feet. The model rent is $18.78. Actual rent is $18.50. We are very, very close to the model rent. And Sketches. Model rent is $19.50. Actual rent is $19.50 because that's not the model rent. We agreed to the Sketches should better to use the $19.50. I apply the agreed rent. Urban Planet. Actual rent is $28.74. We use $20.79 to calculate the final value. Shoppers Drug Mart. Actual rent is $22. We use $24 to calculate the market rent. H&M, not reported rental rate yet, but we agreed to $14 previously. I used the exact same rent to calculate the value. Dollarama, actual rent $18. We agreed to $18. We use the $18 to calculate the final value. The restaurant, State and Main Kitchen and Bar, $37.50. They pay. Actually, we use $36.74 because we believe those are within the market rents. Second Cup, they actually pay $76. We use $44.60 for a market model calculation. Those are the rent detail, and I'm going to move to unfinished area. This KP has unfinished area of 7,500. We use $20. I applied $20. When I issued the supplementary, our original valuation, we used $38.65 for the unfinished area. When we issue the valuation again, supplementary, I had to reduce this to $20 because it's $20 better reflect in the market area. This is the vanilla shell construction. That means it's all the drywalls are done, all the flooring concrete floors are done, HVAC and everything is completed. Some tenant needs to move in and they need to do their tenant improvements. That's the area. We are using $20 right now. You can see the screenshot, how they reported and what we use in my page number 29. And C6, former theater space. I already talked about this one. We use $6 and model rent, and I think agent also here today, he is not disagree with this $6. We all use the $6 for that. And page number 30 is the usual page that we attach in the brief. And page number 31 is the permit detail and Scotia Bank. I'm not going to talk a lot about the Scotia Bank. As we all know, Scotia Bank is newly constructed property. It's in there. And the rent roll, I have attached the rent roll for the information. So this is my presentation. I believe I explained well about the valuation. As our mission, we want to do the fair, understandable, and sound property valuation and the classification for the equal distribution for the taxation. So I'm kindly asking to confirm the valuation as 162,335,000 as the final value for the Kildonan Place. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Mr. Van Bruggen, do you have questions?
I do. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So let's start from the top. If we can.
Can I give you 2 minutes? I need to drink a little bit of water.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, for sure.
Thank you.
No problem. Just let me know when you're ready.
I'm ready.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. If we can turn to page 1 of your brief.
Sure.
Okay, so on page 1 of your brief, you've indicated parcel use is as a regional mall. How do you define how does the City of Winnipeg Assessment Department define what classifies as a regional mall and what doesn't? What are the characteristics that you look at?
Okay, size.
Okay.
And how it's built. It's a one row, under the one row most of the time, but it has attached, detached CRUs. And we follow the size, especially, the guideline. A definition is more than 300,000 square feet and those kind of things. And those are the main factors we decide.
Okay, so just to clarify, it would be enclosed mall and it would be greater than 300,000 square feet would be classified as a regional mall. How many regional malls are in Winnipeg?
We have 6 or 5. Polo Park, Senegal, Grand Park, KP, Outlet Mall, and Garden City. 6.
6. Oh. All right, sounds good. And then you mentioned you inspected this property?
Yes,
Okay.
anytime.
Okay. All right, excellent. All right, now we're gonna shift a little bit. If we can go to starting on page. So if we can flip to page 18, please.
Sure.
Excellent. So you had mentioned, and I just want to clarify that you had mentioned that for the mall component, that the majority of the rents are based on the model, is that correct?
Yes,
All right. And when I'm taking a look, and if we can flip to, so if we continue on, when when the model is calculating rents, what is being used by the model? Is it gross rents that are being used by the models to determine the rental rates, or is it net rents that are being used by the models?
no, right.
Okay, so it's fair to say that as we take a look at the model-driven rents, these would all be based on net rents.
Yes, that's right.
All right. And is this the same for the CRU units, the kiosk units, the food court units, and the storage units?
Yes, every unit is the same.
Okay, so all units are based on net rents. Okay, all right. When it comes to what would the difference be between a net rent and a gross rent?
Because it's all the cost associated, camp cost, and we reduce those ones. The reported net rents, those are the difference.
Okay, so just to clarify, a net rent, the tenant would be responsible for CAM and property taxes and
Taxes,
insurance,
yeah.
whereas a gross rent, they would pay one rate and then the landlord or the owner would pay for the rest of them.
Yes, that's how it's theoretically, but can I add a little bit more? Yes, so sometimes owner reported as $30 per square feet for the really big, it's out of the market range because 10,000 square feet unit rented as $30 per square feet. It is higher than the market, but we believe sometimes it attached with the other component, but we usually don't include those kind of rents for the model classifications. But the rent roll, when you will see those kind of rents.
All right. So again, when we take a look at this, so just flipping to, if we can turn to page, sorry. No, I think that's good. All right, we're clear there. Now, if we can, turn to page 24, please. So to confirm, just to confirm, when I take a look at page 24, so the assessment department, the assessed rents for the property, we have a total net operating income of $10,378,567 for the entire building, or for the entire mall, is that correct?
Can you explain it again?
Certainly, on page 24, for the net income for the mall, I guess maybe I can
Yes.
ask you this way.
Yeah.
What is the
so
net, what is the total net income for the mall? Maybe it's the
Okay,
easier way.
10,378,567.
And if we can compare that reference, cross-reference that page number, and if we can turn to page 47 of your brief, please. So on page 47, this would be the income and expense statement for 2022, correct?
Yeah.
So this would be the income and expense statement closest to the valuation, the April 1st, 2023 valuation date for the property. All right, and if we take a look at the income and expense statement, can you tell me what is the income from operations, or what would be effectively the net operating income for the property?
You mean the total income?
Yeah, so if we take a look, we have the revenues, the expenses, and then if we just take a look at the income from from operations from the building itself.
If I read the revenue line, it's a 17,197,085.
Right, so revenue from operations, but then if we take a look at expenses, and operating expenses, so what would the total net operating income be after you deduct expenses from the revenues be?
As they reported, 8,619,601.
So you would agree that that 8,619,000 is quite a bit less than the assessed net operating income of 10,378,000 that's been assessed?
Okay, as they reported, it is low in this paper.
Okay, all right. If you can do me a favor, if we can flip back and just to unpack something. if we can flip to page, I think you've mentioned it, on page 21, please. So on page 21, you had mentioned the shortfall and discussed that a little bit. How is the shortfall, so how is that shortfall calculated, that shortfall amount calculated? The total shortfall amount?
You mean the model driven $30 per square feet?
Not the model, but like in terms of the total amount, we have $544,583 dollars in terms of what the is what's reduced. So how is that $544,843 calculated?
The shortfall times the vacancy times and the size.
Okay, so vacancy, the amount of vacant space and the size of the building would have a direct impact in terms of the total
Yeah.
shortfall that's being assessed.
Yeah.
Okay. And the purpose of the shortfall, and what's the purpose of the shortfall in this?
Here is the shortfall. The when it's no tenants are there, it's a cover all the expenses, cost and the basic power, electricity, heating and those kind of things. Because there's more, we consider it's they need extra expenses. That's why $30.
Okay, so just to clarify, it would be to cover the expenses that the owner would be covering for the vacant spaces within the
Yes,
mall that
yeah.
aren't being covered by tenant.
Yeah.
Through a checkbook,
Yes.
through whatever number, okay.
Yeah.
All right, excellent. Okay, and I think we're gonna shift gears again a little bit, so talking about the capitalization rate. If we can turn to page 24, please.
Sure.
Okay, so just to confirm, all of the buildings that are on this property are located on the same legal address, is that correct?
It's all of those units in the same address, same civic address, the same roll number.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Okay, they're all, okay, so they're all, they would, you know, arguably, if the property would sell, they would all sell together.
Together.
Okay, all right, but then when we take a look at the information, it looks like you're applying two different capitalization rates. So I see capitalization rate of 6.5% and 6.25%. So if the property would sell as one, why are we looking at multiple capitalization rates for the property?
I have two answers for that one. Overall capitalization rate is 6.5 here. That's where I go more focus on there. But in the valuation theory in Winnipeg, we can use the multiple income stream and different cap rates for the valuation within the Winnipeg jurisdictions, because we have many municipal board orders is allowing us. And also the other answer, if they want to, they can subdivide.
But there's been no indication that the
No.
owner is planning on subdividing
No,
this, we don't know.
no. We
So-
don't know, it's anticipation only.
That would
because
be- So hypothetically, they could
Hypothetically,
subdivide,
yeah.
but there's been no indication that
No,
that's
no,
the intent.
No, 100% no.
All right. Okay, And if we can turn to page 30, please. So on page 30, this is the city of Winnipeg's capitalization rate analysis, that's correct?
Yes.
And on this page, if we take a look at retail, it appears that the city of Winnipeg separates out retail malls and applies a separate capitalization rate to them, is that correct?
Yeah, regional shopping center.
Okay, so now early on in the presentation, you mentioned there are 6 regional malls. Have any of these regional malls sold within the last 10 years?
No, but because we have post-reference information for the one of the mall, and also it's a motivated sale, I cannot speak here.
Okay, but when it comes, and then and calculating the capitalization rates in the table on page 30, this is based on sales that have happened within the market, is that correct?
Yes.
So if the city of Winnipeg's capitalization rate model is based on sales, and there haven't been any sales of regional malls, how has a capitalization rate been determined for Kildonan Place?
As you know, you and me both make a challenge about we don't have any sales in the regional shopping centers. We use the other data, all the other market evidence and everything to find out this capitalization.
All right. If we take a look at regional malls again, and in your experience, who would the typical buyer of a regional mall be?
The investor, the bigger investor.
Bigger investors, investors such as pension funds or REITs so fairly large investors. Okay, and it would be fairly safe to say that the pool of investors who are able to buy a regional mall spend, $100 million plus would be fairly small. There wouldn't be that many investors within the market that would be able to do that.
It's a very difficult question to answer, because I don't know about what's the investors' prospects about buying the property.
Okay.
Then, in my experience, sometimes happen the very different way. Things happen very different way because you know about the recent sale.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's safe to say that the average person isn't going to be buying a regional mall. You or me, I can't speak to you, but we're probably not going to be able to come up with $100 million, or the bank's not going to loan us $100 million to buy a regional mall. Is that a fairly safe?
Yeah, it is fair to say that.
So if we take a look at who is actually able to get financing from a bank to buy $100 million, there's probably not that many people, probably not that many investors out there that are doing that.
That's right.
Okay, right. Okay. Okay, that's fair. Almost done in terms of questions. If we can turn to just a quick question. So just to confirm, the bank value, so the value for the Scotia Bank, I believe that was, we can turn to page 17, please.
Yeah.
So that was value based on the income approach, is that correct?
Yes.
And then if we take a look on page 32. And this would be the construction cost of the bank, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Two questions here. So first, is it safe to say that the building permit would have occurred after after April 1st, 2023?
Because this is the actually final kind, because I don't know about, I did not check the very first day when did they take the permits. I don't know. I can't tell the exact date for that one.
Okay.
It's showing the 24 days.
Right. So if we take a look, you'd agree that the issue date is April 16, 2024, correct?
100%, I would tell you, this might not be the 100% issue date, because these kind of construction, they have really chain of permits when they do the development permits, those kind of things. This particular permit I attach here, this is the issue date.
Okay. And then is it fair to say that building permit value does not always equate to market value?
No, it's on, even the construction value here, we don't know about 100% what the cost associated with it.
All right. Excellent. I think that concludes my questions. Thank you very much. Oh, Madam Chair, you're muted. Sorry.
It's muted.
Sorry. I didn't want to be coughing or anything while you were presenting and asking your questions, and then I forgot to unmute it. You had started off by mentioning that you had some rebuttal evidence. We will hear that after both presentations, so just to let you know, we haven't forgotten about it. I will now go to the panel members. Ms. Knight, do you have any questions for the assessor?
My only question is I just had to find it now. On that summary page. On page 24. You had originally, so the capitalized value on the summary is 159,792, plus the 2,543,000 to be 162,335.
Yes.
That 2,543,000 is talking about stream 2, correct?
Yes, that's additional land value attached with the mall.
You attached it to stream 2, correct?
Yes, yes, that's right, correct.
Okay,
The
so
mall
the
value.
total value for your land is 162,335 million, 162,335,000, correct?
That's right, correct.
Okay, my other questions were kind of figured out through what they were talking about, so I'm good after that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mann, do you have any questions?
I do, just for some clarification, Ms. Teniwara, the 15-1 that was signed resulted or came as a result of agreements pertaining to cap rates, first of all. Is that what your testimony was? There were cap rate agreements that led to the overall valuation?
I didn't understand the question very clearly.
Okay.
Can you, yeah.
In your testimony, you'd indicated that the cap rates that appear on, I think it's page 17. Just let me turn to that. Yeah, the overall cap rates. Sorry, page 24.
Page 24, overall cap rate, yes.
Right. You had indicated that the cap rates as produced by the model were significantly lower than the cap rates as finally agreed to. Those
Not for everyone, not for every income stream. Supermarket cap rate is significantly lower. Strip mall cap rate significantly lower. Bank cap rate significantly lower.
Okay. Those cap rates being lower, they were manually adjusted to.
Manually adjusted for the bank cap rate, bank income stream. I add for the supplementary assessment because bank income stream is the one we add to issue the supplementary valuation.
Okay.
The bank income stream wasn't there originally when we signed the 15-1 agreement.
Okay, and the 15-1 agreement was based on the cap rates that are reflected on page 24. Is that fair to say? Is that how I understand your testimony?
Yes, that's right. But we add the bank income stream. Bank income stream is 6.25. It's adjusted a little bit, but the overall cap rate is same.
Okay. The bank stream or stream number one or income stream number one for the bank, was that included in the 15-1 or is that something else?
No, it's a brand new construction. This is the physical change to the built property. That's because the bank construct. While the time we signed the 15-1, bank is under construction. We did not include anything for the bank for the valuation for that at that time.
Okay.
But it's completed and we issue the supplementary. Now here we talk about the valuation. But as I remember, we maintained most of the agreed parameters. Also, we adjust a little bit according to the rental rates, little bit here and there. And that's how we adjusted the valuation for the supplementary.
Okay, so the value before the supplementary was issued would be roughly 162,335,000 minus 3,181,000, or about 159 million. Is that?
No, because we adjusted some agreed BA parameters like office space. The rental rates I use for the Primaris office. I talk about the first page, page 19, PID number 8999. Our 15-1 agreement, we use $41.48, but supplementary, I use $28.50 because that's the BA agreement, and we kind of honor the BA agreement here because it's the actual owner-occupied office space.
Okay, I'll jump to the end of my question with respect to that.
Okay.
What was the agreed on value for the 115 for the 15-1?
Okay, 157,000. Okay, 157,337,000.
Okay, and that is before the bank income stream was
That's
added.
right.
Okay.
And there's some little bit of adjustment here and there. Because that's why I cannot tell you exactly, these two income stream add together, we'll get the final number, because when we issue the supplementary, we further go ahead and corrected some errors, omission and those kind of things. One of the error we corrected is because when we talk to the agents, they raise the question about we are using incorrect area for the Cineplex. It's a smaller discrepancy, but they raise the question about that. I changed the Cineplex area.
Right. Yes, I got that.
Yeah.
And
Those kind of things, then it's not the clear cut number. This number minus this number would generate the final value.
okay, fair enough. Now, turning to page 14, your bank rent comparables. I'll wait till you get to page 14.
Yeah.
You're at page 14?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I'm ready.
I'm looking at the bank rate comparables, and first of all, 1485 Portage Avenue, the TD Bank, that's in a separate area. That's not in Polo Park, the main Polo Park Mall. It's in a little strip mall area outside the main building, is it not?
That's right. This is a very similar situation for the Scotia Bank located in the KP, because Scotia Bank not inside the mall, they are located in the pad side. The TD Bank also the exact same situation.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. When looking at the plans, I couldn't tell if that was attached to the mall proper or if it was a pad lease.
No, it's a standalone building built in the pad side.
Okay, thank you. The other question I had related to page 28 on your presentation. Page 28 relates to, at the bottom, tenants and rents not included in the above tables.
Yeah.
The tables that you had produced before that related to the kiosks, this food court. I'm not going to read them all out.
Yeah.
But the tenants not included, are those actual rents the ones that were used in your calculations for that income stream?
Not every time. I put the model rent per square feet column and the actual rent per square feet column. But the model rents, you can see, that's the column rents we use for the calculation.
So the model rents were the ones that you used.
Yeah, but some actual rents and the model rent is a similar number because we already negotiated number, because that's why I tell the very beginning, this is not 100% model evaluation. This is the combination of negotiated, agreed, and model combination of value thing. Whatever my model rent column showing the rent are the rent I applied for the final valuation.
Okay, fair enough. And that for those tenants and rents not included, that's almost 28% of the total leasable value.
Yeah.
Okay.
And those are the bigger units. That's why I did not include in none of those tenants. They are not fit on the one of the about tenant tables.
Okay, thank
you.
Huge units.
Great. I think I've got a clearer picture of it now. Thank you very much. I don't have anything else, Madam Chair.
I just have one further question, if I could.
Sure, go ahead. Yeah.
So on that page 28, where you're listing Arby's storage, is Arby's still in that mall? Like, what's the date of these rental properties?
Oh, you are talking about the storage and mezzanine?
Yes.
Those are the storage unit. No, usual people cannot see those storage. Those are in the enclosed area. They only Arby's has the can go and.
But what's the date that this is referring to? Because Arby's is no longer there, correct?
Oh, okay. Because this is the reference period. This is the rent roll period.
They were there in this period. Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. My questions pretty much were all asked by Mr. Mann. I was interested in the 15-1 from previous and how you made the adjustments to the current assessment. So I think I'm good with my questions. I think what we'll do right now is take a 10-minute break so that we're not going to interrupt your presentation, Mr. Van Bruggen. So we'll take a recess right now until about 10:25.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll take us offline, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We're back online, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. I'd like to call the meeting back to order. And at this time, Mr. Van Bruggen, when you're ready, please proceed with your presentation.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Appreciate it. Okay, so just before I get started, a couple of housekeeping issues. As I'm going through the presentation, I'll be making reference to the bottom right page number. So it should be identified as M&P page something of 230 in the first submission. So just so we're all on the same page, what I'll do typically if I'm moving around a lot is I'll give a page number in a minute for everyone to get there, just so we're all on the same page.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Second thing is, in the past, I have been told I am a bit of a fast speaker, so if I am going too fast, please don't hesitate to flag me down or let me know. Happy to slow down.
Okay.
All right. With that noted, if the board will turn with me to page 4 of the submission, please, we'll get started. So generally what I like to do is just give a high-level view of the property, some general information about the property, and then we'll get down into the specifics. So most of this has been discussed in advance, so I'm not going to dwell on it really, just kind of hit the high points. So the subject property, as mentioned, is a regional shopping center located at 1555 Regent Avenue, also known as Kildonan Place. According to the rent roll, the property has a gross floor area of 409,124 square feet with a leasable area of 403,051 square feet. Kildonan Place was originally constructed. We got here in 1990, but it looks like sounds like it's the 1980s, with expansions done in 2010, 2017, and 2025. The most recent major expansion or renovation occurred in 2025. As mentioned, the property is anchored by a Save-On Foods, as well as Cineplex and a Marshalls. The property originally, as mentioned, had a Sears on the space. And they have since converted that. It's gone through a couple different iterations over the years, but we have kind of reached to the current current iteration as we are right now. As mentioned, the assessment department has valued the property at $162,335,000. M&P is requesting a value of $137,924,000. As I go through the presentation, I'll provide the calculations of how we came up with that value and just kind of give a little bit more information there for the board. The board will turn with me to page 5. Page 5, we have the executive summary. So again, not going through this in great detail. However, one of the issues or one of the things that we are going to be talking about for the property is the property, well, 1555 is a large property. It also has a high number of tenants that are either paying percent rents or gross rents. And the result of this is that the assessed potential income is higher than the actual income. So again, a big component of that is when we take a look at the leases that are in the structure of the leases in place, there are a lot of instances where the landlord is not able to collect those operating costs, which is having a drag on what the overall income for that property is. Additionally, the assessment department has used capitalization rates ranging between 6.25% and 6.5% for the property. Again, it's in this situation, certainly the property is, I'm not going to say unique, but there haven't been a lot of sales of regional malls. There haven't been any sales of regional malls within the city of Winnipeg. So again, when we're taking a look at this, it's our position that a 7% capitalization rate is more appropriate. So I'll go into explaining how we made that determination and what are some of the considerations that we looked at when coming up with that 7% capitalization rate. So again, all of these factors in place, once we adjust the net operating income and after we adjust the capitalization rate, that's how we're coming to our value of $137 million. Starting on page 6, we just have the approaches to value. So I'm not going to go through that. It's there for the board's reference. It just talks about the 3 approaches to value: the income approach, the cost approach, and sales comparison approach. But I feel that we're all fairly familiar with all the approaches here in the room, and we're talking about the income approach today as well. We have assumptions, some top discussions on assumptions and limiting conditions on page 7. Page 8, we have relevant legislation, case law, and Manitoba municipal board decisions. And then on page 9, we just have a scope of the discussion. Page 10, we have authorized user. And page 11, we have a discussion on highest and best use. So again, I won't go through that. It's more so just if there are questions, we can refer back to some of this information, but it's there for the board's reference. The board can turn with me to page 12, please. So on page 12, we have the current assessment for the property as mentioned. So the current assessed area, current assessment for the property is $162,335,000. Page 13, starting on page 13, moving into page 17, are the working papers provided by the assessment department. We've already seen this in the assessor's presentation, but we've provided those there for the board's reference if you feel so inclined to look at them. If the board will turn with me when ready to page 18, please. I'll just pause here for a moment. And just let me know when you're there. Okay, so on page 18, we have a requested value here for the property. So here we have how we've come up with our requested value of $137,924,000. The adjustments that we've done to get to that point. So the first adjustment that we've made or we've looked at is the potential income. So we have adjusted the potential income for a number of the units, and we'll get through that and discuss how that came about. We have made an adjustment to the vacancy rate for the mall component. We've left the vacancy rate for the mall or for the bank, for the grocery store and the strip mall as assessed, but we have increased the vacancy rate applied to the mall. We've also made an adjustment to the expense allowance for the mall. So again, 3% expense allowance for the strip has been used for the strip mall, the grocery store, and the bank. However, we have pushed it up to 6% for the mall, and I'll talk about that a little bit when we get to that point. And then finally, for the capitalization rate, we've used a 7% capitalization rate across the board. And I guess I should note, we also have made an adjustment to the land value that's been applied to the property as well. So we are looking for seeking a little bit lower value. But again, I'll take the board through each one of these adjustments. I just kind of wanted to give the board a roadmap so we know where we're going with this conversation and what pieces we'll be discussing. So starting on page 19, we have some external pictures of Kildonan Place. I'm sure we're all familiar with what that property is and where it's located. Page 21, starting on page 21, continuing on until page 35 are all pictures, interior pictures of the mall. So we did do a site inspection for this particular property. Went through that mall. I believe that site inspection was done, I want to say the beginning of 2025, so probably January of 25. I don't have the exact date, but we provided those pictures there for the board. So again, more so just to kind of give the board a sense of what we're looking at within the mall. I'm not going to dwell too much on the pictures because I feel most of them are fairly self-explanatory. However, if we can turn to page 26, please, and just let me know when you're there. Okay, so on the bottom of page 26, so this is the old Cineplex theater space. Continuing on until page 27 and page 28, as well as page 29. So this is what that theater space is, what the state and condition of that theater space is. As mentioned, the theater space does exist on the site. It's currently not functioning as a theater, obviously. As indicated by the assessor, the property has been, parts of it are being kind of used as storage, but you can see that that property is for all intents and purposes, vacant space. if you can turn to page 31, so page 31 are just some of the storage spaces that are within the top picture on page 31, is just some of the storage spaces that are within the mall, just to kind of give you a sense of what those look like, mainly because they're behind closed doors and most people don't see what those look like. Page 32, we have a picture of the Save On Foods. You can see me wandering around there. And then we have some pictures of the mall itself on the remaining pages. If the board will turn with me to page 36. So on page 36, we're going to talk about the valuations for each component of the mall. We felt that was probably the easiest way of doing it. The assessment department is looking at 4 revenue streams for the mall, so we've approached it the same way. So as mentioned, the income approach considers rental rates, vacancy rates, shortfall rates, non-recoverable expenses, and capitalization rates. Over the years, Kildonan Place has undergone a number of significant changes, with the former Sears space being converted into a cinema and grocery store, and the former Zeller space being converted into a number of units. So that would be the HomeSense, the Marshalls, the Urban Planet, and the H&M. As well as there's been development of a couple pad sites and the bank. So currently, the mall is occupied by 7 major tenants, with the remaining tenants being a mix of local and national tenants. If the board will turn with me to page 27, or sorry, page 37, I guess. So starting at page 37, we are looking at the first piece of the puzzle, or the first income stream, which is the shopping center. So as noted, the shopping center contains a number of different spaces. So that would be food court space, storage space, kiosk space, and CRU space. Now, one of the challenges that we face when looking at the spaces is we've taken a look and we basically run an analysis of what is the actual rent the property is achieving compared to what the assessed rents are, and then taking a look at the difference there. Now, one of the challenges that we face is how do we deal with situations where there's a gross rent in place, or there's vacant space, or a percent rent. We have to kind of make some decisions on how to include that within our analysis. And just for the board's reference, if the board turns with me to page 41, and we'll flip back. I just want to give the board a sense of why I'm talking about this. So on page 41, you can see the analysis that we've provided here for the mall. And basically what we've done is we've gone through each unit, looked at the assessed rent, the assessed annual rent, the contract rent, which is the actual rent in place, and the annual contract rent. So what that value would be, and we've used that to determine what the net operating income for that, or the potential income should be for that space. So just to give us the board a sense of why I'm talking about what I'm talking about. So if we can turn back to page 37. So again, as mentioned, in order to do this analysis, we have to make a decision on what rent to apply for these vacant spaces, or spaces with gross rents, or spaces with percent rents. And in looking at that, what we've done, or the approach that we've used, is we've taken a look at recent leasing for those space types to say, okay, what rents are those spaces generating, to give us a sense of, if we were to rent them in the market as of April 1st, 2023, what would they rent for? So for the food court, we've taken a look at recent leasing. So this would be leasing from 21 to 23, the valuation, just to the valuation date. And we've determined that, during that time, there were 5 leases that were signed. Those leases range from about $100 a square foot to $255 a square foot. We take a look at those food court rents. We take a look at the average and the median. And then we've made a determination, what would it be a reasonable rental rate to apply? So we feel that based on this information, a reasonable rental rate to apply for any spaces that are vacant or not a triple net lease would be about $150 a square foot. So we've used that $150 in our analysis. If the board will move me to the next page, page 38. Page 38, we have done a similar analysis for storage space. Now, storage space, one of the challenges that we faced was trying to determine what rental rate to use. So for the board's reference, I believe all of the storage space within the property is all gross leases. So as discussed, or as that came up through questioning, what a gross lease is basically the tenant pays one rent. So let's say they're paying $45 a square foot, and that covers everything for the space. So there is no recoveries for CAM or common area management. There is no recoveries for property tax. So they're just paying one rent for that space. Now, we took a look at this and we kind of went back and forth. We make an adjustment. How do we make an adjustment? Because there's a couple different ways we could do it. We can either adjust the rental rate, or we can make an adjustment outside of the rental rate. So because most of the spaces that are storage tend to be gross leases, we felt that the appropriate road would be just to use the base rental rates as they are, and then we would make an adjustment on the expense, on the non-recoverable expenses to account for the slippage that is existing with these spaces. So what we've done is we've looked at leasing that's occurred between 2021 and 2023. You can see we provided that analysis there. Looking at that leasing, we can see that it ranges from $22.86 up to $45 a square foot. Based on that, we felt an appropriate rate to be using would be $40 a square foot. So as we're taking a look, any vacant spaces or any vacant storage spaces that are within the property, we've used that $40 square foot rent. Then we looked at kiosk spaces. So again, we took there are 13 kiosk spaces within the property. We took a look at recent leasing to account for what is an appropriate rental rate to apply for the vacant spaces or gross spaces that are generating a gross rent. Looking at recent leasing, so this would be leasing from 22 to 23. We see that those kiosk spaces are renting from about $210 to $360 a square foot. Taking a look at that, we felt that a rental rate of $270 would be appropriate to apply to those spaces. Based on what we're seeing within the market, we feel that that would be a reasonable rent to apply. And then finally, when it comes to the CRU spaces, so we have used a similar approach to what the city of Winnipeg has done. We've taken a look at CRU spaces and split those out between small, medium, and large spaces. So for small CRU spaces, that would be any space between 0 to 1,000 square feet. For medium CRU spaces, that's 1,001 to 4,000 square feet. And for large CRU spaces, that's anything greater than 4,000 square feet. Again, what we've done to account for any vacant space or spaces with percent rent or spaces with a gross rent, as we've taken a look at recent leasing within the market, within the property, to get a sense of what we would expect those spaces to be renting for if they were to rent as of April 1st, 2023. Using that, if the board will turn with me to page 40. So using those analysis, we have used the following rental rates. So for small CRU spaces, anything under 1,000 square feet, we've used $45 a square foot. For medium CRU spaces, that's between 1,000 and 4,000 square feet, we've used $35 a square foot. And then for larger CRU spaces, we've used $14 a square foot. So again, these are all based on this is all based on the leasing from the property. That recent leasing from the property, just to get a sense of where we'd be going with that. So with that in mind, we've taken a look at the potential gross income for the mall. So we've recreated, or we've taken all of the assessed spaces or the mall component. We put that into a table and we've compared what the assessed rents are with the actual rents. And from that, we've determined, we calculated a potential gross potential income for the mall of $10,203,128. So the potential gross income is the income before expenses are applied, or before non-recoverables are applied, or before vacancy is applied. So this would be what the mall would be able to generate if it were 100% occupied. If the board will jump with me, sorry, I apologize, we're just going to jump back to page 18. And if you look under the mall on potential income, you can see we've used that $10,203,128 there. So just to give the board a sense of where this fits into the overall equation. If the board can turn with me, and I apologize, we're going to flip back to page 41. And just let me know when you're there. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Excellent. So starting on page 41, this is the analysis that I discussed. So here we have provided all of the CRU spaces for the mall. We provided the tenant, we provided the square foot, we provided what the assessed rent for each one of those spaces are. The annual rent that's in gray is the area multiplied by the assessed rent. So that's the annual rent for that space. Then we have the contract rent. So this is what that space actually is achieving right now. And then we have our annual rent. So that would be the contract rent, multiply the area, that gives us our annual rent. So here we provided all that information for the board. We've also provided some notes there on some of the different components. So you can see the first space, Booster Juice, 110 square feet. This is a storage unit. The city has, or the assessment department has it assessed at a rent of $33.97. It's generating a contract rent of $42. We've made a note there. It is storage and it is gross. Now the next one down, we have a nail bar, which is a CRU space. The assessment department has an assessed rent of $42.86. The CRU space is over 1,000 square feet. As mentioned, this is a percent rent. This is a percent rent situation, so they're paying. So this tenant is paying a percentage of their sales. Again, which makes it very difficult to determine what that appropriate rental rate should be. So instead of trying to calculate that, what we've done is we've said, okay, if we were to lease this space as of April 1st, 2023, using recent leasing within the market, we've determined that would be at $35 a square foot. And that's from the analysis that we provided for the board on page, that we provided to the board on page 39. So we feel that $35 a square foot would be appropriate. I'm not going to go through all of these because there are obviously quite a few leases. But what we've done is we've gone through each and done that similar analysis. And anywhere where there is a vacant space or a percent rent or a gross rent, we've applied the rental rates that we've calculated. And we've highlighted those in yellow. So as you go through, you can see that there are a number of situations where there are rents highlighted in yellow. And that's the reason for that, is because there is something going on with those rents. We've also included within the notes why we've done what we've done. So the board flips through that. So if the board goes all the way down to page 45. So on page 45, we have the analysis. So this would be what is the total assessed rent for those spaces on the bottom of on the top of page 45. So you can see the city of Winnipeg has a total annual rent of $10,595,570. Based on our analysis and the approach that we've used, we have an annual rent of $10,203,128. So there is a bit of a difference there. And again, that is primarily due to just the analysis we've done. And there were a couple area changes. So that's why the city's numbers might be not 100% what they reported. So there were a few instances where the areas were a little different. So that's the mall. So certainly, and that's how we calculated the percent rent, or that's how we calculated the potential income. Now, if the board will turn with me to page 46. Page 46, we have the other components. So obviously we have a vacancy allowance, a shortfall rate, and a non-recovered expenses. So for the vacancy allowance, as mentioned, the mall has been assessed with a 5% vacancy rate. As of April 1st, 2023, the mall had vacancy of, just a little below 35,000 square feet, which equates to 9.6% of the mall space. So we're only looking at the mall space. Again, the bulk of that space is obviously has been derived from the old Cineplex building. Now, the assessment department has indicated we've applied a low rental rate, so that should be, or a low rental rate of $6. So we're taking that into consideration, which fair, but the problem is that space still is vacant. So it is still vacant. There are still costs that the owner is incurring to take care of the space. They're obviously not able to collect CAM or property taxes for that space. It is having a bit of an impact on what the overall value of that space is. And it currently is vacant space. As the assessment department has clearly indicated, there is a plan to demolish that building, but it hasn't been demolished yet. So again, as we take a look at these values and as we take a look at the property, I don't think dealing in hypotheticals is particularly helpful because there could be anything that could happen. So we have to deal with what's actually there. So because the space is there, because it's vacant, Because it would have an impact on what the valuation of the property would be. Our approach has been to increase the overall vacancy rate for the mall from 5 to 6% to account for the fact that that space is vacant. As mentioned, the mall currently has 9.6% vacancy. This takes the vacancy from 5 to 6%. So we're not going straight to the 9.6. We understand there are other factors at play there, but we do feel an adjustment of 1% on that vacancy rate is fairly reasonable. For the shortfall rate, the assessment department has indicated that they've used a shortfall rate of $30 a square foot to apply to the vacant space. Again, in terms of reviewing the actual operating cost from the mall, it's M&P's opinion that $30 is reasonable. And that covers both CAM and property taxes. So that's all covered within that $30 a square foot. Then when it comes to the non-recovered expenses. So non-recovered expenses, these are expenses that the owner isn't able to get back. So they're not able to collect this money. So typically what that would be, and everyone's a little different, but it's typically things such as leasing commissions, if they're doing any work to the building. Again, a lot of times it's difficult to collect that back. So this is money that the landlord is unable to collect from tenants. So basically what the slippage is. So as the amount that they can't collect from tenants goes up, obviously that has an impact on what can be recovered and what can't be recovered. So of the mall, so the area of the mall, roughly 96,000 square feet of space is either on a percent rent or a gross rent. And the CAM or the property taxes for these spaces are the responsibility of the landlord. So as we take a look at this, we have to make a determination of how do we factor this into our calculation. We know anyone who's buying the mall is going to be taking a look at what the net operating income is. Part of that calculation is how much of your expenses are recoverable. How much of your expenses can you collect under your triple net lease commitments from your tenants? And we have seen that, again, there's a fairly large number of tenants in here where that's not possible. So to this point, we have to make a determination of how do we adjust for this? How do we account for this? So we could have either made an adjustment on the rental rate, which can get a little questionable. So we felt a better approach or a more appropriate approach would just to increase the non-recoverable expenses for the mall. So as mentioned, the assessment department has used 3%. In taking a look at what that space is and considering that roughly 25% of the space doesn't have recoveries, we felt it was appropriate to increase that non-recoverable to 6%. So again, that 6% is to account for all of that space, for the gross rents, for the net rents the percent rents that are in the building, where the landlord is unable to recoup those expenses on those spaces. And when we get to the financials, I can certainly run you through a little bit of math there just to kind of explain to you why we did what we did. If the board will flip with me to the next page, page 47. So these are the building, these are the units within the building where they are either a percent rent or a gross rent, and they're not able to collect the operating costs for those spaces. So that would be your CAM or your taxes for any of those spaces. So this is kind of where we get our 96,000 square feet of space in that analysis there of these are not net leases that are signed. And as mentioned by the assessment department, all of the rents that the assessment department uses in their model are all based on net rents. So in these situations where we don't have a net rent, we have to make some considerations and take that into account. If the board moves me to page 48, we have the grocery store. So the grocery store is a Save On Foods. It has assessed rental rate of $17.50. M&P does recognize the property is generating a rental rate of $23.50. However, one of the factors that we have to consider is the fact that this is a new grocery store. So this was a Sears space. They converted it, and now we have a Cineplex and the grocery store. As part of that conversion, that involves building out the space. So obviously, a Sears is not a grocery store. Grocery stores obviously have a very different layout. You need different components with it. So in order to get to that point, they need to build that space out. So there's money that there's money that has to be spent on that space to get it to the point where it can be used by a grocery store. So part of that $23.50, what that actually consists of two parts. One, we have the rent that goes to the owner, and two, we have a tenant improvement allowance that has to be repaid over time. So what happens is the landlord says, okay, you want to build a space out, we're going to give you X amount of money, however millions of dollars it is. But the expectation is that money is paid back over term, usually over the course of the lease. So that rental rate that you're seeing, that $23.50, is both what the rent is going to the landlord, but then also recouping those tenant improvement allowance, the money that was spent for tenant improvement allowances. So based on that, we feel that a rental rate of $17.50 is reasonable and would reflect what the space would lease for in the market if you were renting a grocery store space. Obviously, if you're coming in, you're taking say Sobeys and you're moving it to Save on Foods. Well, you got all that freezer space, you have all that fridge space, you have all that setup there. That's fine. You're going to pay a different rent than if you have to fully build out that space and create it from scratch. For the vacancy rate, we felt a 4% vacancy rate was reasonable. Shortfall rate, $6.50. Again, looking at the expenses for the grocery store, that appeared reasonable. For the 3% non-recoverable, again, in taking a look at that space, as the assessment department has looked at it separately, again, we felt that was reasonable. This is not we didn't think that there was any reason to change that. So we only applied a increased non-recoverable to the mall itself. Page 49, we have the bank. So as mentioned, construction just finished on the Scotia Bank, located in the parking lot of Kildonan Place. We've taken a look at leasing within the market. We've got a number of leases there of banks. Again, we can see that leasing is occurring, at a range. There's a range of rates that we're looking at between $31 to $47 a square foot. As we take a look at those, we get an average of $36.33 and a median of $35. Again, as we take a look at this, the assessment department has used a rate of $38.80 for that space. Obviously, the bank was completed post-fact, so after the valuation date, so we're not going to be looking at that. However, we did feel that a rate of $36 would be appropriate based on what the leasing is within the market. So that's kind of how we came up with our rental rate there. Vacancy allowance, 2% is reasonable. Shortfall, $8 is reasonable. We did notice the shortfall might be a little low. However, again, looking at that, we didn't think there was much reason to dispute that, especially considering the fact that they are paying the rate there. 3% non-recoverable. Again, we just used the city's 3%. Again, it didn't seem. This has a triple net lease as far as we're aware, so it didn't make sense to make any adjustments there. For the strip mall, again on page 50, what we've done, similar analysis, taking a look at the strip mall. For this point, we have used the rental rates that have been assessed. Same vacancy rate, same shortfall, and same non-recoverable. So going through each one of those pieces, and if we can flip back to page. I apologize here. So page back to 18. So on page 18, this is how we came up with our valuations for page 18. So we took a look at the potential income for each one of the units. We took a look at the vacancy rate as applied. We take a look at the expenses for the units, what's recoverable, what's not. And that's how we calculate what our net operating incomes are for those units. So that's that's the background of how we kind of got to the net operating income component of that particular property. So as you'll note, we have in our analysis, we're using a net operating income of the property of $9,494,514. And you can see that on page 18 there under the total units. So total units is basically just the bank, the mall, the grocery store, and the strip mall. All of the net operating incomes all added up, and that takes us to our $9,494,514. Now, if the board will turn with me The board will flip with me to page 51, please. I'll just give a minute to get there. Excellent. So on page 51, so we have the financials for the 2022 financials that we've used for the mall. So these are the actual financials for the mall. One of the things you can see as you take a look here, so we have the revenue, we have the expenses, operating expenses, and income from operations. One of the things I will note as you take a look at revenues, you'll see revenues are $17,197,000. But if you look within there, you can actually see that they include the cost recoveries for the op cost and the property taxes. So as the board, if the board takes a look at that, so you can see they have office rent, retail rent, percent rent, straight line rent. You can see, and then if you take a look under that, you can see operating cost recoveries and property tax recoveries. So operating cost recoveries are just a little under $4 million. And the property tax recoveries are just a little under $2.3 million. So that's the reason why you're seeing this recoveries number, the revenues being so much higher. And then what they do is they subtract the operating costs from that property as well as the management fee. Now, when we take a look at the operating costs, you can actually see that the operating costs are quite a bit higher. So these are the costs in terms of running the properties. So if you take a look, you can see that they're recovering about $4 million in operating costs from their tenants. But if you take a look at what the actual operating costs they're generating, it's $4.5 million. So the reason that they're not recovering the full number of their operating costs is because you have those gross rents or the percent rents in the property. So because contractually, they cannot recover those operating costs from their tenants. So there's some slippage there, about $500,000 that is going to be eating into the net operating income. Same thing when it comes to the property taxes. We can see property taxes, they are recovering $2.297 million from their tenants. Again, that would be through the lease, they're paying a portion of the property taxes. When we take a look at the actual property taxes that the property is generating, $3.265 million. So we can actually see that there are property taxes here that they can't recover from their tenants. Again, this is part of the reason would be gross leases or the percent rents where they're contractually unable to collect that money from. Then we have the net operating income and the specialized taxes and then the management fee. So all of those pieces combined, what we end up getting is income from operations of $8.6 million. Now, as mentioned, when we took a look at the property, the city is using a net operating income of $10,400,000. We're using after we do our analysis, we're using a net operating income of $9,494,000, and the property is generating a net operating income of $8,619,000. So we're even lower than what we had used in our analysis. But again, taking a look at this, using our approach, we did feel that $9.4 million was appropriate and should account for some of this slippage. Just for the board's reference here, if we take a look at what the the actual expenses are versus what they can recover, we are calculating slippage of about 23%. So if we run our calculations, it looks like they're able to calculate. Oh, I apologize here. Bear with me for 1 minute. Yeah, so it looks like of the total expenses that they have for the property, there's $8,577,483 in expenses. The property is only able to recover $6,297,000, which equates to 73% of the expenses being recovered, so 26% of the expenses not being recovered. So again, as a reminder to the board, the city's applied a 3% non-recoverable expenses to the property. We've increased that to 6%. So we are still quite a bit less in terms of what they are recovering, but we feel that adjustment is reasonable to account for the gross rents within the property or the net rents within the property. Or the percent rents within the property. If the board will then turn with me. So was page 51. So if the board will turn with me to page 52, please. I'll just give a minute. If you just give me a nod when you're there.
Yep, we're good, thanks.
Excellent. So in terms of the additional land value, so the assessment department has used additional land value of $2,543,000. That's a calculation based on the amount of land that they've calculated, plus rate that they've applied to account for that land rate, which is based on sales within the area. Now, under the City of Winnipeg subdivision regulations, land is subject to a subdivision, where land is subject to a subdivision, the city requires a public reserve dedication of 10% of the land area, or equivalent cash in lieu payment. So this comes out of section 135 of the Planning Act, and the city's land development fee schedule. So again, when we take a look at this, understanding the approach that the city has used, and we're not going to deny the fact that there is some additional land on that site there. However, it's our position that if that land were subdivided out, there would be some additional costs, obviously, that they would have to account for, probably quite a few additional costs. But the one that we can quantify for the easiest is the fact that there has to be that subdivision or that private public reserve dedication or the cash in lieu of 10%. So when we calculate our land rate, what we've done is we've used the city's $2,543,000, accounted for the 10% reserve, and that takes us to a value of $2,289,000 to account for that dedication. So again, when we take a look at our rates, we are using a slightly different land rate than what the city has used. And then finally, if we can move to page 53, we'll talk about the capitalization rate. So in terms of the capitalization rate, when we're talking about it, for the 2025 assessment year, the city has used two capitalization rates. So that would be 6.25 and 6.5%. Now, as mentioned through questioning, the challenge that we face here, and this is obviously a problem for all involved, is the city hasn't actually had a sale of a regional mall for the last 10 years. So the model obviously is using sales that have occurred within the market to determine what an appropriate capitalization rate is. So in a situation where we don't have any sales, it does pose a bit of a challenge. So when we started looking at this to try to make a determination of what is an appropriate rental rate, we were, obviously one of the things that we were dealing with was a lack of information. So the board turns with me to page 54. But what we do know is that these large regional malls tend to be bought by a specific group of buyers. So these are pension funds, these are real estate trusts that tend to transact with this property. This property is owned by Primaris, but we know that RioCan owns properties, we know that Smart Center owns properties. So these are large companies that operate on national and in some cases international basis, on a national and international basis. So when we're taking a look at these, what we've done, or what MMP has done, is we've cast a wider net. So instead of just looking at sales from Winnipeg itself, we've taken a look and said, okay, where are there other instances of regional malls that have sold, and what capitalization rates have they sold? Because again, we're trying to determine what rate of return do these large investors need as they're buying and selling malls. What are they looking for? So the board turns me to page 55. We have provided, again, some sales, and I will readily admit these sales are not from Winnipeg. These sales are from Ontario, they're from BC, they're from Alberta. We've collected this information through CoStar, and what they've done is said, okay, we can see that over the last few years, from 2018 to 2022, when these malls are selling, they're selling for actual capitalization rates ranging from 6.2% to 9%. So we can see that they are selling for capitalization rates that are kind of within that range. So taking a look at that and taking a look at what that average is, we get an average capitalization rate from those sales of 7.52%. So again, when one of these large pension funds and investors are looking for a property, they're looking not just specific for Winnipeg. These properties are fairly unique. We know there's only a few in Winnipeg. They're looking national wide when they're determining where to deploy capital. And when they do deploy that capital, this is the rates of return they're looking for. It's kind of that 6.2 to 9.5. If we take a look, we can see the most recent sale was a sale up in Edmonton, Alberta, and that took place in 2022, December, for an 8.5% capitalization rate. We also took a look to say, hey, how are these malls transacting compared to community malls? Is there a difference? We know the assessment department has defined there being a difference, and we took a look at that. We actually did see that there was a difference on community malls. So these are malls that are smaller, versus, so these under 2,000, kind of under 200,000 square feet versus the regional malls, which are larger. And again, when we took a look at that, we can see those community malls are transacting for capitalization rates from 5.75 to 9%, with an average capitalization rate of 6.85. Again, part of this is the fact that these are smaller malls. They tend to be a little bit more affordable, affordable in a general sense, with a larger pool of investors that can buy them. Whereas the regional malls tend to be selling for much higher values. It tend to have a much smaller pool of people that can buy. So that was the first step, is saying, okay, let's throw out a much wider net and let's see across Canada, how are these investors buying malls? What rate of return do they need? What rate of return are they looking for? That was step one. Step two, if the board turns with me to page 57, is we took a look at market reports. Now, I will stipulate one of the challenges of market reports, as we're taking a look, is it's providing some general information. Typically, and the board is going to say, well, how does the market know when there haven't been any regional malls that have sold? How do they know what the malls would be? Typically, there's done through surveys. So what that is Colliers or Cushman & Wakefield or CBRE, or Altus Insight sends out a survey to people who are sends out a survey to market participants and says, okay, if you were to buy a mall in this location, what rate of return would you need? So this is not them putting their money where their mouth is, but this is just saying, this is the rate of return we'd be looking for. So through this, when we take a look, we can see that Altus Insight for the investment survey report for Q2 2022 and Q4 2022 is they would be looking at a 7.4% capitalization rate. So in requests, in conversations with owners or people who are looking at buying, they're saying, yeah, if I'm going to buy a mall, a regional mall in Manitoba, I'd be looking at a 7.4% rate of return. That's the capitalization rate I'd be applying. We also took a look at third-party market reports, and we can see these market reports, capitalization rates for regional malls range from 6 to 7.5%. And if the board will just take a note, if we take a look at the regional malls that we provided there, that table, you can see we've taken a look at Q1 2021 and Q1 2023. Q1 2023 obviously being the valuation used for the valuation date. Q1 2021 is from the previous year, or previous cycle. And if you take a look across the board, you can see for the most cases that the required capitalization rates for regional malls have actually increased. Now, that's not a huge surprise. We know that interest rates have obviously gone up from Q1 2021, but we have seen across the board, if someone's going to be buying a regional mall, they would be expecting a higher capitalization rate than what they had previously expected. If we take a look at Q1 2023, we can see those capitalization rates kind of 6 to 7% for Colliers, 6.5 to 7.5% for Cushman & Wakefield, and 6 to 7% for CBRE. So we can see what market participants are indicating that they'd be looking at. So again, step one, take a look at the market. We're seeing a 7.5% capitalization rate would be reasonable. Step two, take a look at what market surveys are saying. And they're kind of saying 7.4, 7%, is kind of what we would be looking at or what people would be expecting. The other factor that needs to be considered is on page 58. As mentioned, there are a large number of spaces within the building that have a gross lease or a percent rent lease, which again provides some additional risk to anyone who's buying the property. If you're buying a property or you have two options, a property that is fully occupied by tenants that are paying net leases, or a property which has a number of gross leases or percent rent leases, you have to say, okay, how would an investor look at that? Well, in that lease, you know you're covering your operating costs. You're not going to be out anything. You're able to collect the money that you have for rent. You know that stability. That's a safer investment. If you have a lot of percent rents or gross rents, well, you don't know, right? If your op costs go up, that means your revenues drop. If your sales drop within the property, that means your revenues drop. So again, there's additional risks that come with both owning a property with gross rents and percent rents, particularly when it's such a high percentage of them, what we're looking at. So again, that's another factor that would be coming into play for anyone who'd be buying the property, is just the type of leasing within the property. If the board will turn with me to page 59. So again, when we're taking a look at the property, so Primaris is a publicly traded company. They need to value their properties on a regular basis using IFRS. So that would be in internal accounting. Because again, they're reporting this information to investors. They're saying, this is what we feel the value of our buildings are worth. That is on a stock market. People are then taking a look and saying, okay, this is what I want to pay for their stock. So every quarterly, what they need to do is they need to go through and say, what is the value of our properties, and how do we value it? So as part of the reporting that Primaris does, part of their financials, they provide they provide information on the capitalization rates they've used within their IFRS valuation. So as we take a look at this, we can see that they have a number of capitalization rates there. For March 31st, 2023, you can see that would be right near that April 1st, 2023 valuation date. Excuse me, they're using a weighted average capitalization rate of 6.87%. Now, it's worth noting that 6.87% covers properties all across Canada. That's not specific to properties in Manitoba. But again, as we take a look at this, it does give us a sense of what that valuation is. Now, I also want to note that in talking to Primaris, as we were looking at the value, they did provide us an appraisal that had been done. So this is a third-party appraisal done by JLL. The appraisal date was March 31st, 2023, so just before the valuation date. And the appraisal has a value of $131 million. So actually, the internal valuation for this property is $131 million as we take a look at it. Now, we didn't go to that $131 million. That was a third-party appraisal's opinion. We did provide the appraisal in our package. We did get permission. We provided it there for the board's reference. I will mention it, and I will take the board to it. I'm not the one that put together the appraisal. It's done a little bit, it's obviously done a little differently. They've looked at different analysis. So I can't speak to it, but I will provide that information and take the board to that information as we go through, just for your reference. But our request is that 137 million based on our analysis we have provided. But again, it just provides another piece of the puzzle or another consideration for the board to look at. Now, I'm going to pause here for a sec. We do have a post-fact sale. Now, I understand the position on the board of post-fact information. I get the fact that there have been a number of decisions here. So I'm going to let the board know that we have provided this information on a post-fact sale. It is post-fact, we're not hiding that. We did not rely on this for our analysis. Now, the reason we provided it is just because there isn't much information within the market for this particular property type. If there were a industrial building or a retail building, a small retail building, we had lots of sales, well, then we don't need to look at post-fact. But because there is a lack of information, this has been more provided for trending purposes. So again, for the board's reference, take it as you will.
Yeah, we won't take that into consideration in our deliberations if it's, yeah. Thanks,
Okay,
so.
sounds good. Well, then I won't talk about it, but I wanted to acknowledge that the fact it was there. And just kind of give a context around what we did. Okay. If the board turns with me to page 60. So the last consideration is interest rates. So again, when we're taking a look, appraisal theory has a number of different ways that a capitalization rate can be determined. So the first, obviously, most common method is the direct market observation. So that's sales within the market, how they transacted, what are the capitalization rates. The second is the mortgage equity consideration. So that is basically saying, what is the risk-free rate of return? So Bank of Canada bond, and then adds a premium on that to account for liquidity, high transaction costs, cyclicality, what have you. And then there is other sources, which would be third-party market reports. So if the board can turn with me to page 61. So again, we provided just an explanation there from appraisal theory, looking at this using the mortgage equity component. So again, what we can see here, and this is an important consideration, is that from April 1st, 2021 to April 1st, 2023, the Bank of Canada has increased their overnight rate quite a bit. What we've done, and I apologize here, this has come through a little bit later than I had hoped. We've taken a look at the 5-year bond, the 10-year bond, the 20-year bond, and the 30-year bond, just to get a sense of how have rates changed. So this would be, what is the bond, what is that 5-year bond yield as of April 1st, 2021? What is that 5-year bond yield as of April 1st, 2023? And then we calculated the difference. So what the board can see here is that for each one of these, so whether that be the 5, the 10, the 20, or the 30, we see bond yields increase from 1%, that would be for the 30-year bond rate, up to 2.09%, that's for the 5-year bond rate. So again, the reason we provide this, and the reason that we have this consideration for the board, is if we take a look at this, a risk-free return in the market, as we see that going up, it would be reasonable to expect that investors would be expecting a higher rate of return on these properties as well. Anytime you're buying a property, you're always looking at what are my alternatives. If you can throw your money into a GIC and get 5% or 5.5% at a risk-free rate versus buy a mall, why would you pay the same amount? So there's an expectation that there will be a premium that is provided. Again, this is there are other factors that obviously need to be taken in consideration here, but we're just saying, on average, what do we expect to happen for capitalization rates? We have certainly seen third-party market reports indicate that investors are expecting higher capitalization rates, and part of that reason would be the fact that bond rates or the Bank of Canada interest rates have obviously gone up over that time frame. So again, it would be our position that that would impact what a reasonable capitalization rate would be to apply to the property. So when it comes to the capitalization rate, we've obviously looked at a number of different factors when we're coming up with what that should be. So we've looked at sales, we've looked at market reports, we've looked at internal documents, we've looked at what capitalization rates have been doing over that time frame. If the board turns with me to page 62, based on all of those factors, it's our position that a 7% capitalization rate would be a reasonable capitalization rate to use when we're valuing the property. We do think that would be reflective of what the market would be expecting for this particular property. If the board can turn with me to page 63. So page 63, we go through that full analysis again, using the 7% capitalization rate, using our adjustment for land value, using all that information. That's how we come to our $137,924 valuation request for that particular property. If the board will, so starting on page 64 is just some supporting documents from the board's reference. There's again not a ton of information there, but just there for the board. Page 72 is just a picture of Kildonan Place. So this just kind of gives a floor plan of the mall, showing where all the units are and just kind of showing the layout. Again, just there for the board's reference in the event that you're looking for it. We have some information on the shopping center definition. So this is from the Canadian Retail Real Estate Standards. So this is basically just looking at what defines a regional mall, what defines as a neighborhood mall, what defines as a community mall. Again, not super important, but just for the board's consideration there, just to see that there are certainly different types of malls within the market. And they do appeal to different types of investors. So we've provided that information for the board there to page 82. Starting on page 84, we have a discussion on commercial leases. So And then starting on page 85, a discussion between the differences between gross and net leases. So that information just kind of talks about what's included in a gross lease, what's included in a net lease, how do they differ, just for the board's reference there, because we certainly have talked about the lease structures that are within the building and taken that into consideration. So again, I won't go through it. We've discussed it a little bit with the assessment department. There's been some questions there, but that information is there in the event the board is looking for some clarification. That information runs to page 92. Starting on page 93, continuing on until page. It's continuing up to page 117. This is just all the market reports that we've used. So again, that information we've summarized it all earlier on in the submission, but this is just the market reports that we've used when coming up with the capitalization rates to account for regional malls. So we have provided that information there for the board's reference if you want. Starting on page 19, moving to page 123, we provided the rent roll for the property. Page 125, continuing on until page 147, we have the income explanation provided by the city of Winnipeg, valuation of income producing properties for the 2025 general assessment, there for the board's reference. Again, more there as if there are questions that come up, that information is there that we can certainly look to, but we won't go through that. Starting on page 149. I'll just give the board a moment to get there. Thank you. So starting on page 149, we have the JLL valuation advisory for Primaris. So this would be the valuation for Kildonan Place. If the board will turn with me to page 150. So on page 150, they've taken a look at what they believe the market value of the property would be. You can see here, based on our analysis information, it's our considered opinion that 100% market value of Kildonan Place would be $131 million, as indicated there below. We have provided the full appraisal there for the board, or for the full valuation there for the board's reference. So again, I won't go through it. We provided that there for the board's reference. The only thing is, if the board will turn with me to page 188, please. And just let me know when you're there. Excellent. So on page 188, we have the valuation and how they've come up with their $131 million. And again, there are some decisions that they've done their analysis their own, so I won't be able to speak to that, but I do want to highlight the fact that when coming up with the valuation for the property, they've used a capitalization rate of 7.375% for the property. So you can see there 7.375 is what was used to derive what that income value of that property should be, and what they feel would be reasonable using the direct capitalization approach. So again, just a little bit of additional support for the capitalization rate that MMP has used in our analysis. That full report goes on until page 229. And with that concludes my presentation. I welcome any questions from the board or from the assessment department. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Tanawara, do you have any questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have some questions. I have a general question first.
Mhm.
Do you believe about providing a trend comparables it gives a better appropriate methodology to value the property?
Sorry, providing rent comparables provides.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we do think that the income approach is the most reasonable valuation for the property. We do feel that the best comparables would be the information from the property itself. Every building is unique, every property is unique. So certainly there would be different considerations depending on the property itself. So Kildonan Place is not the same as Polo Park. There's obviously a difference between the two properties there. As we're taking a look at that, it would be our opinion that if we have leasing from Kildona Place, it would be the best indication of what future leasing from Kildona Place would be.
I will stop you there.
Okay.
Then that means you are not providing any market rent comparables for the valuation.
Well, we are, because we're providing recent leasing from the property itself, so there.
It's the subject property lease information. You use the value of the property only using subject property lease information. Is that correct?
Correct, because we feel that that is the
That's
most,
all I need to know.
because we feel, again, if we take a look at it, that the recent leasing from the property is the best reflection of what to expect.
That's fair. I just want to know what, yeah, that's all. Then I would like to go to page now 27 in your brief. You mentioned those are pictures from the former theater space.
That's correct.
Okay, do you know about does owners actively leasing these spaces to lease out for someone?
No, our understanding was they were using it for their own, they weren't leasing it out to anybody, they were just
Okay,
using it.
they don't have any intention to lease it out.
Again, my understanding is that the intention is to take it down, but that space does exist.
Okay,
So again, if we're taking, we can't really deal with hypotheticals, so just looking at the situation as it is, as of today, it does exist, so we have to consider that.
do you agree the owner use as for the random storage?
There is,
The fully, it's 25,000 square feet, it's very difficult to use as a fully storage, but it's a kind of.
I mean, there is some stuff in the
Yeah.
in the space, yeah, for a little bit, you can see some of that in the picture.
Okay, thank you. Then, do you agree, based on your pictures, do you agree Kildona Place went through significant renovation and remodeling?
There has been some renovation, yeah, so obviously, as mentioned, the Zellers and the Sears have both changed, they've been repurposed, for a couple, they've been repurposed, the old cinema is not being used, they have put the bank up, so yes, there have been changes
Okay.
to the property.
Okay, and page 37. This question regarding food court rent.
Hmm.
AFE kitchen and chair house are special leases.
The AV kitchen and chai house,
Chair
okay,
house, special leases.
okay.
I want to know about what's the rationale you choose only these kiosk rent, because there are some other net rent paid kiosk rent available.
So these are the rents that were the most recent. So we tried to focus on the most recent rents that we had for the space to determine what a reasonable rental rate would be.
Okay,
And to be honest, part of the, it's our understanding that the food court is gonna be part of in part demolished. So again, we're taking a look at it, that's certainly a factor that we're looking at when considering.
okay, then if you check the rent roll,
Mhm.
Korea Japan and Subway, those are also the very reasonable rental rates, but you haven't used those ones.
So
for
Korea,
analysis.
Korea Japan and Subway we did, yeah. So we've got, if we take a look on page, I'm taking a look at page
Oh, you
37.
use the Korea Japan, yes,
Yeah.
sorry, yes. Then you agree if you use the entire kiosk rent, sorry, food court rent, your average rental rate would be higher than what we actually use for the 147.
I haven't calculated what that is, but we looked at most recent rents, so kind of leasing that occurred from 21, 22, 23, we felt was the best indication of what the future leasing would be.
Okay, do you agree my brief, page number 26 showing the average rent for actual rent is $226. When I use all the net rents, no.
Yeah, so I agree that I agree that the calculation on your page 26, you've indicated average model rent of $209. And you've indicated an average actual rent of sorry, average model rent of 209 and average actual of 226. So yeah, I do agree.
Okay,
But-
thank you.
I do think that we have used slightly we've included different rents because I don't see some of the other properties.
No problem. I just want to know, that's all, yeah. And I will move to storage rents. I agree those storage rents are gross rent because they already paid the other unit rents. This everyone has a storage rent, has their CR unit, is that right?
I mean, I haven't gone through to calculate it one for one, so, but it seems likely that I can't imagine why you would have a CR unit and not be collecting that rent for storage. So yes, but again, when we take a look at all the storage spaces, as we look at the rental, we can see that they're not paying
Okay.
CAM or property taxes.
Okay, do you agree your $40 per square feet gross rent is so much lower than our $33 model rent?
Yeah, no, I agree. We've, again, as mentioned, we took a look at recent leasing. We had to make some decisions. They're all gross, so we had to figure out, do we adjust?
Yeah.
To account for the fact that they're gross rents and you're using net rents in your analysis, or do we adjust someplace else? So
Okay. Do you agree about we consider to be netted out, that's why we are using $33 lower rents than the $40 gross rent?
well, I can't speak to how the city has done it. I can only
Okay.
speak to how we've looked at it,
Then
so.
you agree our rental rates are lower, that's all.
Yeah, I agree, yeah. I mean, there's a range, but
Yeah.
certainly when we take a look at recent leasing, they are kind of in that $40 range.
Okay. Then I move to kiosk rent. You use the 257 as the kiosk average rental rates, is that right?
So we took a look, we got an average of 257 and or average of 271 and a median of 257.
270
Or
US
two-
average,
Yeah, so I believe we used 270.
okay. I want to look at turn to page 20. Give me one second. Page 40,
Okay,
yeah, page 40.
Yep.
Do you see your large CRU units? You only include the 2 units for average analysis. Is it fair?
again, when we took a look, we looked at most recent leasing. So there are only 2 recent leases that were signed within the property to be used within our analysis. So we did try to use as many as we could. And we did see that there were 2 signed that were in 2022. That would be Ardeen and Boathouse, 1 in 18 and 1 in 10. So we tried to use the most recent information when making a determination, because again, rental rates change, the market changes, or obviously have been some changes within the market over that time frame.
Okay, do you know what the Boathouse is a motivated rent? It's a $10. Do you believe the $10 is a market rent, actual market rents for this one?
Well, again, that's what they're paying, so I don't think that
Do you know
Primary's,
Boathouse pay percentage rent on top of them $10?
again, we didn't take a look at that, we got the rent roll. As far as we're aware, $10 is what they're paying. We didn't include percentage rents, because again, percentage rents are based on the sales that they have. And sales fluctuate, so it becomes very difficult for us to make a determination of what that would be. So we said, without that, to consider how should we look at the spaces that have percent of gross rents? And that's where we just said, let's use the average of recent leasing that's occurred.
Okay, then why didn't you use any of the larger tenants like Dollarama, Marshalls, and Urban Planet, or all of those tenant lease information to calculate the larger tenant?
You bet. So we try to use the most recent leasing. So I would have to take a look. I can't exactly remember when some of those leases were signed. But we would just give me 1 second here. So if we take a look. So Urban Planet is a gross lease.
Okay.
So we didn't use Urban Planet because it was a gross lease.
Yes, that's
Agent-
with the Marshalls.
Uh,
Marshalls is not the gross lease, it's a net lease.
Marshalls. I would say probably due to the fact that the Marshall lease was signed, the date that the Marshall lease was signed, we were trying to use the most recent leasing, but I'd have to
Okay,
confirm. Sorry, bear with me here.
No, go ahead.
Um, Yeah, Marshall's was signed back in 2016. So again, we didn't use the Marshall's lease because it was signed back in 2016 and we didn't feel that was appropriate. Same H&M, H&M is H&M is percent rent, but that was signed back in 2017. So again, but I mean, we wouldn't have used it for a couple of different reasons. Urban Planet was signed back in 2017. So again, we were trying, Dollarama was signed back in 2018. So we were trying to use the most recent leasing when coming up with a value.
Okay. Then your conclusion, small CRU space would be $45 per square feet as a market rent, and medium CRU would be $35 and large CRU will be $14. That's kind of average conclusion.
Yeah, so if you take a look on page 38, we've got the leases that we've used, or sorry, page 39, and then page 40. So we've taken a look at recent leasing that's coming from those spaces to try to determine what each one of those spaces would be.
I want you to flip to page 41.
Okay.
So I understand this theory, but when I see this calculation, I'm asking to check the CRU unit T23B, T23A, not T23B, T24, T25. Those kind of rental rates, you mentioned those are gross rent, especially T23B. Then if the size is 2,091 square feet, gross rent, but this calculation, you use that gross rent to calculate, not, you don't use the $35 per square feet.
Just need to confirm. Yes, so that looks
Yeah.
like that was, yes.
And when I listen to you, your conclusion, if they are paying percentage lease or semi-gross lease or gross lease, you should apply for the small or medium or large rent as you kind of calculated and showed. But your chart, page number 41, 42 and 43, I went through entire thing. I did not see that theory applied here. I see about net pick the leases. If the leases are smaller, you apply here. It's the vacant units, of course, you apply the agreed analyze the rent you as analyzed. But the other ones you net pick here and there. I don't understand what's the theory behind these two pages. Even the DFA fashion, you use $13.97 because it doesn't include about showing about net rent or gross rent, but even those same gross rent, percentage rents and those ones, it's everything everywhere. I don't understand the theory. It's kind of conflicting. For information is the best thing I could tell. You use the both house rent to analyze to find out $14 would be the appropriate rent. But your calculation, you use the $10 per square feet.
Can you maybe ask this as a question rather than?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Is that correct?
Well, so just for the board's clarity, when we took a look at the property, if there was a lease in place, so if there were an actual rent in place for that space, and you're right, for those ones we did miss that. We should have used the $35 in the gross rents. So for a space with an actual net lease in place, we use the actual net rent. So for Boathouse, Our understanding was that is a net rent at $10. We've used $10 within the analysis. If we saw a space with a gross rent or a space with a percent rent, or a space that was vacant, we applied the rent that we calculated based on the most recent leasing for the property, as we felt that was the most reasonable approach when looking at this property, and coming up with that value.
But you did not follow that entire thing. That's my question. You present the different theory, but you applied the different theory when you calculated potential gross rent. Why did you do that way? Can you please explain?
Yeah, so we had made on those ones that you had outlined, we did make a mistake, I will admit. If I put $35 in, it takes the value to 10,280,000. So we're fairly close to what we had used.
Okay, and also I want to give attention A1 Primaris unit.
Mhm.
Then $28.50. I don't know you are aware about or not, but we have signed 15-1 agreement with MNP agreeing $28.50. I use this rent. Why you are using $16.06?
Probably because that was on the rental.
No, it's a owner-occupied unit.
Right, but the owner is still paying rent. This is a pension, this is a trust. So again, these properties, while the owner might be occupying it, this is still owned a publicly traded company. They still need to pay rent. They are paying a rent, and we know that this location for the space is a challenge. It's off to the side. It's not exposed to the rest of the mall. So again, we use the rent that they were paying.
Okay, then I know this is quite a bit of exercise going through all correcting the gross rent to applying $35 or $45 rent. Do you think if you go through this exercise, your gross potential income is almost equal to our gross potential income, or it's exceed for the gross potential income?
Give me 1 second here. I haven't done the analysis. My understanding was that, just let me take a look here. So to answer your question, for the storage spaces, and to provide that explanation, we didn't make an adjustment for gross. So we just took a look.
No,
and the 40
I'm not
and the-
talking about storage places. I'm talking about the CRU units, because you and me all agree about storage spaces is a different scenario.
Oh, okay.
I only talk about the CRU places.
Yeah, they think the question was, if you had put the CRU unit numbers that you had mentioned as the averages into your workup, would that have made a difference to your evaluation and made it closer to the city? I think that was the question. And maybe you can't answer that without going through a whole workup, which I'm not sure we want to wait for at this point. Yeah.
So for the three that were outlined, so there were three that were outlined as gross, and I agree, we did make for those ones, so that would be Wing It, H&R Block, and DC Design. So that would be units 23, T23B, T24, and T25. If we apply the $35, that takes the net the potential income to $10,280,955.
And I want to ask this question because those are the only units I question about. But when you see that picture, you see about so many other units also not applied the trends correctly. Do you willing to go through those exercises, or just you wanted to move forward?
Well, if we take a look, so let's go to that page and let's talk about that. So if we take a look at page 41.
Okay.
So let's go to page 41.
Yeah.
So taking a look at page 41, as we take a look at this. So for the storage rents, you can see anything that indicates storage rent gross. We didn't make an adjustment. So we used the rents in place because again, we, all storage rents in the building are gross. So we applied either the storage rent that was in place, or if it was vacant, we applied the $40. So we didn't take that into consideration.
How about T11, Sunshine Records, and T12?
So these are semi-gross leases, so they're paying, so again, they're paying part of the operating costs. So again, we have to make a decision, there has to be a split, okay, in a situation where part of the op costs are being covered, well, then it would make sense that would be a lot more closely refined to a net lease than what we would see on a gross lease. So they're not paying part of it, not paying part of the operating costs, but they're paying the other pieces. So they're not true gross rents. So again, when making that determination, we had to sit back and say, what is the right way of doing it? So we applied the rental rates that they're applying because they're not true gross rents. So when we took a look at it.
Can I just sort of stop it here? I don't think we want to go through every rent and have an explanation of every rent. I think we get the general gist of what the city is asking. And Mr. Van Bruggen, and then you can do a follow-up question if you'd like after that. But can you just summarize the areas where there were some errors and how you did this one more time? And then I think rather than going through every one, we'll make a decision based, and then you can ask one more question related to that, Ms. Tenuera, if you want to, okay? Rather than us going through every property here or every lease.
Okay, so just for the board's reference, so when we take a look, if you take a look at page 41, we have T23B, T24, and T25. So that would be Wicket by Need It, H&R Block, and DC Designs Inc. Those have been identified as gross rents, and they are gross rents. So within our analysis, we did make a mistake, and we applied the actual rents that they were achieving. If we take that and we apply the rents that would be applied for those type of spaces, that would be $35 a square foot. We end up with an adjusted potential income of $10,280,955. So if the board will take a look down on page, down on page 45, that would be the annual rent. It would go from $10,203,128 to $10,280,955.
And then you have given us an explanation for the semi-gross.
Yeah.
And so, okay, so Ms. Tenuera, do you have any questions after that?
Madam Chair, can I answer only one question related to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Then Primaris, you are indicated here is a gross rent. And still it's used as a $16.06. I don't understand that one.
Sorry.
Can you explain?
Certainly. So just
A1, unit A1.
A1. Right there. It's $16.06. Bear with me here. Oh, you're right. So that would be, if we change that to $35. Yes. Sorry. Fine. So that would $10,309,498. So another $20,000 on top of that.
10 million what?
$10,309,498.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, please proceed with your questioning. I just, there's a lot of leases here, and if we sort of went through a question with every single one of them, I think we'd be here for a very long time, and I think we understand the gist of what you were asking, so.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome.
Can you turn to page 46?
46, sure.
Yeah. This is about the vacancy space.
Mhm.
And I'm not going to talk about a lot, But do you agree 25,000 is used as the storage? Out of the 34,941 square feet. Oh,
Sorry, just give me 1 second here.
okay,
Okay,
34,941 square feet, which is including the storage space of 25,000 approximately. Is it correct?
so if we flip to page 123, please.
Yeah.
I'm just looking over there. So if we, page 123 is, this is the rent roll.
Yeah.
So on the rent roll, outline, they actually, the Primaris actually defines storage space. So they have 3,330 square feet of vacant storage space. And when we take a look at occupied space, they have 40,811 square feet, or sorry, 34,941 square feet of vacant space. And again, part of that would be due to the fact of the old Cineplex space. So we do recognize that.
Majority of them are former movie theater.
Yeah, so, and we, and I
That's
mean,
all I need.
as mentioned, we do
We all
recognize.
talk about this one so much, that's all, I
Okay.
thank you. Yeah. Then page 46, shortfall.
Yeah.
Do you understand my explanation about the why we using $30 per square feet as a shortfall for the mold portion?
So my understanding is that you was based on the operating expenses for the mall. And it's to account for what the owners aren't able to collect from the vacant space, so
Okay.
yes.
And do you agree about when you use the shortfall amount as a $30, you don't need a expenses amount to be increased for 6%? Because it's a double dipping, because city, I know you are the first time you are doing the regional shopping centers, but do you understand the theory, how we value the shopping centers?
Right, and I understand the theory that the shortfall is to account for, or the shortfall rate is to account for the vacant space that's not being collected, I understand that. The problem that we have for the mall is that there are significant gross leases within the mall. So as we take a look at the financials, we can see that they're only collecting about 73% of the expenses that they're having that they have for the mall. So while we understand that the shortfall is to account for that space, it doesn't account for all the gross leases that are within the building. Because again, as we discussed, anything that has a gross lease, the owner can't collect the CAM or can't collect the operating costs or can't collect the property taxes. So because of that, we need to make an adjustment to account for that. Anyone who's buying the property is going to say, oh, there's a lot here I can't collect. So understanding your position for the shortfall, but it doesn't fully capture all the impact. Sorry, give me 1 second here.
Okay, sure.
If we take a look at what we have for the shortfall, the board will turn with me to page 18. I'm just looking over there.
Sure.
So on page 18, if we take a look, we can see that the expense allowance that's been provided. We take a look at the expense allowance, so that's based on the 3%, and then we take a look at the shortfall. If we take a look at the expense allowance using the 6% for the mall, we're at $610,000 for the expense allowance, and another $667,000 for the shortfall amount. If we take a look at what they're actually not collecting, it's in the millions. So we're only capturing about 1.2 million of what they're not collecting, versus if we actually take a look at the financials, if you turn with me to page 51. On page 51, if we work through the math, we can see, just give me a second here. We can see that the property has total expenses of $8,577,483. We can see that the expenses that they're able to recover are $6,297,000. So if we take a look at what that difference is. We're at $2.2 million what they're not able to collect. So again, even though we understand that the idea of the shortfall is to help capture some of this slippage, it doesn't, because of all the gross leases in the building, it only captures a small portion of that. So even by increasing the expenses for the mall or the shortfall amount for the mall from 3 to 6%, we only end up at $1.2 million. And they're losing over $2.2 million per year on what the revenue is going to be. So we do feel that the shortfall doesn't actually go far enough to capture to best reflect the situation because of the gross leases that are in the building.
Okay, I will ask the question in page 51, when you, it's a special lease in revenue, they are collecting 1,702,000 approximately as this special lease in revenue.
Okay.
Those special, when we go through the rent roll, there are not much special leasing. But do you think about this amount also include some tax proportionate or tax and CAM and all the other expenses?
Well, I think the special leasing is for the gross leases and the percent rents. So I disagree. I think when we take a look at it, we've provided the financials. So this is showing what they're pulling in for the special leasing, which is primarily made up out of gross rents or percent rents. Gross rents. When we take a look at that, this is what the financials of the mall are. So after the gross rents don't take into consideration. So yes, what you're getting on gross rent is everything. So if a unit is paying $40 a square foot in a gross rent, that's meant to cover the operating costs and the property taxes and all those other factors. But as you can see, with $30 operating costs for the building, it doesn't leave much left over to the landlord. Most of that's eaten up if we take into consideration because of operating costs. So we have two options. We either reduce the rental rate that we apply to spaces with a gross lease, or we make the adjustment someplace else to account for the fact that they aren't able to collect on those operating expenses. So what we chose to do is, instead of adjusting the gross rents, we've applied a rental rate that is based on reflects the market, and then we made an adjustment to account for the expenses.
I want to ask this question this way. Do you believe we use the lower rental rates than actual rents, that reflect the extra proportion of the operating expense, and also we are giving $30, we are using $30 per square feet shortfall amount because our model rents are lower than what actually collected. Do you agree with that?
No, I agree that some of your model rents are lower. I think some of your model rents are higher. And I think when we take a look, you only looked at the spaces with net leasing. Once we consider all of the spaces, I think it's very clear that the net operating income is overassessed. We know that the property has been assessed with a net operating income of over $10 million. When we take a look at the actual performance of the property, you can find that on page 51, and we've already highlighted this. We can see that the actual performance of the property is only generating net income of $8.6 million. So no, I disagree. I think there's clearly, it's clear that if we look at the actual performance of the property, that it's not performing as assessed.
Yeah, I really wanted to get the smaller answer because we already listened most of the information and detail. Can you please give me a very short answer? So your page 47, there is a column showing other income, other expenses, other amount. Those are the amount they pay other than the base rent for the gross rent tenants. Is that right?
So there is additional, there's a little bit there.
Okay, and also some tenants, example, Ricky's, T52. They are paying $66.84 as a base rent. Do you think about this is a combination of, this is a base rent?
Well, this is a gross rent, right? So they're paying.
This is a gross rent, but
they're paying $66.84. And then
but we don't use those kind of higher rent for the model. We use the average model rent as a $29 then is it so much lower?
Right.
Do you think, but we don't, we do consider those kind of rental rates, even though it's show as the base rent? Do you agree?
Well, that's one instance, but then we have other instances where there.
We have many instances.
Yeah, many instances. So again, the problem we face with gross rents is the fact that the landlord is unable to collect for the operating expenses. We know there's $30 operating expenses in the building. So between CAM and property taxes, it's rough, as outlined, is $30 a square foot. So in order to calculate what the landlord is actually getting, we have to take the $66.84 and make an adjustment. So we can either take the $66.84, subtract $30 a square foot to get what a value would be, or we can make an adjustment somewhere else.
Calculate what is the actual net operating income for the building, for the per square feet. Did you calculate actually what it is?
So when we take a look at the rent roll, the board will turn with me to page. So the board will turn with me to page 119, please. Actually, no, let's turn to page, sorry. Let's turn to page 121. So on page 121, we have Fashion and Browse there. So this is a CRU, so this is a small CRU unit. We can see they're paying $20.97 in CAM. They're paying $9.88 in property taxes. So if you go all the way up, you can see CAM is the first one. So that's common area management. And then the $9.88 for property taxes. So as you go down, and as you look, you can see property taxes are pretty consistent at $9.88. And when we take a look at CAM, they range from about $20 to $21. There's some variances there, but roughly, when we take a look at those two components, CAM and property taxes, that equates to $30 a square foot. So if we take a look at what the landlord is not collecting on those leases. So for example, if we're taking a look on page 121, we have State and Main. They're paying $37.57. They're not collecting from CAM. They're not collecting from property tax. So they can't cover that. So the landlord is paying $9.88 for the property tax for that space, and they're paying $21 for the CAM. So that actually reduces the amount that the landlord is going to get for that space fairly significantly.
Okay, I want to move to page page 52. Page 52, this is about the additional land value, what is the additional land value rent you use for calculate this amount?
So we've used the city rate, the city's value of $2,543,000, and then made an adjustment to account for the fact that there's that subdivision requirement of either 10% of the land or an equivalent cash in lieu. So if they were to ever subdivide this land, there would be a cost associated with that.
Okay. Would you agree that if they develop as this one as a part of the Kildonan place, they don't need to do the subdivision? Do you agree with that?
Well, I think if they are, if they're looking at, if they're going to develop it as Kildonan Place, I would have a question. I think then it becomes a question of what's the appropriate land rate to apply. So in a situation where you can sell land on the open market, we can, there's obviously a value to that. If they're going to be developing it on their own site, my appraisal theory typically is that land has a lower value. So we've simply used what the value would be based on.
You give me the answer for my question.
Okay.
And would you agree actual additional land area is greater than what we use for the consideration? In my brief page additional land value, my brief page 15 showing the actual area for the additional land is greater than what we considered for the additional land calculation.
again, as you said, there's landscaping considerations, there's parking considerations, so I think
No, after that, because
Right.
you can see those consideration, I did not mark as a yellow, the only yellow area together. It's a higher land area than what we use for calculation. Do you agree?
we've used the city's $2.5 million and made an adjustment to account for what the subdivision value would be. I think if we
Because
take
we use
sorry,
two different methodologies. I want to ask this question because
Mhm.
you see the valuation 2,200,000 no, 200, sorry. The price of 222,589 as actual full area of the land could be developed. But do you agree we don't use that much of land because it's the actual potential land size is higher than what we use for the calculation? Do you agree that? Because it's a total area should be 283,245.
well, I think that excess land is a complicated question. I think it's measured I think you've measured the land, you've calculated this area. We've
Okay,
used the city's rate and we've said that that if the land is subdivided, we need to make a 10% adjustment because there either has to be the dedication or the cash in lieu. So that may happen.
Okay, I'm gonna stop it there because I think he's answered the question as to how they came to that number. And you may not agree in terms of your number, but I think we get it. So can we maybe move on from this?
sure, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I want all of those regional shopping centers are within Canada. Your page 55.
Page 55.
Yeah, it's all of the Canadian states.
That's correct.
Yes. And page 57. All this inside cap rate is the do you aware it's the opinion of the professionals for the cap rate?
Yeah, as indicated, there haven't been and as discussed, there has not been a sale of the regional mall. So as we indicated here and as we noted, it's based on a survey of market participants to determine what an appropriate capitalization would be for local markets.
Do you aware about the IFRS regulation calculation? It's on the purpose of those ones are different than we use for the appraisal.
Well, IFRS is the value of the property. So because Primaris is a publicly traded company, investors are going to be buying and selling based on the financials and based on what they believe the building values to be and what they believe the building value cash flows will. So I would disagree. I actually think that IFRS, the goal is to try to determine what is the market value of these properties at any particular time.
Madam Chair, I wanted to mention one thing. The false facts, I don't want to talk about the false fact, but the
Yes.
information here is incorrect.
Okay, well, we're not going to consider it, so
Okay, I just want to mention.
Yep. Yep.
Now I'm moving to appraisal. You have attached here. Do you have the written authorization to present the appraisal report from Jill?
Yeah, so we did talk to Primaris, we did talk to the owner of the property, they did reach out to the appraiser, and they did give permission for us to share this.
You have written permission?
We have it in the email that we had it in the email saying that, from Primaris saying that they had concurred.
Okay. I'm also gonna stop this line of questioning too. I didn't say anything when we were at it, but an appraisal, you know, we're looking at sales when we're making our decisions, not on appraisals. So I don't know that we need to particularly get into this.
Okay, sure. Thank you,
Thanks.
Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, can I ask you a question? Then do I not need to go through any appraisal report information?
No, I don't think you do. No.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Yep.
So that's my question. That's all my question.
Okay, thank you. I think we probably need another, now I know Mr. Van Bruggen, you have some rebuttal. Do you as well, Ms. Tanawara? You do. Okay, so we'll take a break. Would everybody like 15 minutes in case you want to grab a little something, or 10 minutes good?
I think I'm fine with it. I mean, Madam Chair, just so on our side, I think I would expect my rebuttal to be probably about 15 minutes or so. It's
Okay.
not gonna, it'll be fairly quick.
Okay,
So
we'll take a shorter break then, if
Yeah.
that, if
Yeah,
that's,
yeah,
so we can try to get moving, but I think everybody, we've been sitting here for a couple of hours now, so let's,
Yeah.
so it's, let's come back at 12:25 and we'll take a recess until then.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll take this offline, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much.
Just a moment, please. We're live again, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. We call the meeting back to order. So we left off at the point where it is the panel's turn to ask questions of Mr. Van Bruggen. So Mr. Mann, I'm going to ask you first if you have any questions.
I do have some questions, primarily related to your calculation of the net operating income, Mr. Van Bruggen. The net operating income that you have advanced is 9 million. Oh, I'm just looking at number. That's page 18. So just might have a moment to go to that. $9 million. Sorry, I'm on a different. When I refreshed all my page, it appeared. So
18?
yeah, it's page 18 in the Myers-Norris Penny.
Yeah.
Okay, yes. Your net income on page 18 is $9,494,514. That's what you have presented or proposed to us? Okay, and that net income is, of course, going to increase when the rental amounts that you've assigned are adjusted upwards based on some of the questions that Ms. Tanawara was asking. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I can give you that updated number if you like.
No, because it's going to change further after the other questions. So I'm just looking, I can do some of those calculations myself. I'm looking as well, and following up with what Ms. Tanawara said was at page 40, she was talking about the large CRUs. The large CRUs that you have indicated are over 4,000 square. The large CRU spaces are over 4,000 square feet.
Yes.
And you have two that have led to your average of $14 a square foot, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Oh. And I know that Madam Assessor went through a number of the larger CRUs, including T32A, T74, T90, T89, all of those. And you had indicated, I believe, and I'm just summarizing so I've got this clear, that you had come up with your $14 because they seem to be the most recent leases. Is that fair to say?
Right. So for the leases that were in place, that were not a percent rent or gross rent, we use the actual leases that were in place. The leases that to determine what rent we should apply for either vacant space or space that has a percent or gross rent, we've applied the most information based on the most recent leasing. So that's where the $14 comes from.
Yeah, not the leases in place, the most recent leasing.
Yeah,
Right.
the most recent, exactly. Those leases that have been signed within the last couple of years.
Because the leases that are in place for a considerable period of time. You don't have the dates on these, but the dates of these leases are included in the appraisal report, are they not?
Yeah, so there are some of those leases that are in place, yeah. And if you take a look on page 49, we do have the rent roll, which outlines lease start and end date. So yes, there are some of those leases are in place for a while.
And do you have the average rent as it would appear if you use the leases that were currently in place and not just the most recent? If you don't, that's fine. I can do those calculations.
You bet. So no, we didn't, so what we did is for any of the leases that had net rent that had been signed, we used the rents in place. So let's say, for example, let's use for argument's sake, let's use the Dollarama. So Dollarama, this is T74. This is space T74. This is 8,663 square feet. This was signed back in 2020. The rental rate for that space is $18 a square foot. So if we take a look at our analysis, give me 1 second here. So to find where that is.
Sorry, which page is this again?
We're looking at T74, which is on page 43, three
Yeah,
down
that's where I am.
off the
Yeah,
dollar
okay.
large
Yeah,
CRU.
so 43. So
Thank you.
signed in 2020, $18. So we used $18 in our analysis. So we said, okay, that rent's in place, it's in place for the time being. It's a net rent. We've used that $18. Now, for example, but then if we take a look at, say, if we take a look at Urban Planet, that's a gross lease.
So what
So-
number is that? Sorry.
So Urban Planet would be, bear with me here.
T96 CRU. But I wasn't asking about the storage of the gross rents. I was
Yeah,
asking about the leases in place, the net rents, of which there are 5 or 6, including Shoppers, Dollarama, Marshalls, and T89, all of which are significantly higher than the $14 a square foot. Isn't that correct?
well, but then if we step back, one of the challenges that we face, so for example, the space for Urban Planet, that's a gross lease. So if the
Yes.
board,
Yes, Mr. Van Brew, I'm aware of that. We're not dealing with the gross leases.
Right.
I'm asking about the net leases that are, as I've identified, Shoppers, Dollarama, Marshalls, and T89. I can't remember what T89 is. That's just CRU Skechers, it looks like.
Yeah.
At $19.50. Those are all net leases, are they not?
they are, yes, but they're older net leases. So
But they're in place. As
Yeah.
of the reference date, they are in place, are they not?
That's correct.
Okay. And they continue well past the reference date, as is noted both in the rent rolls and in the as appraisal report.
That's correct.
Okay. And thank you.
And we use those rents that were in place for those leases in our analysis.
The tenant improvement, I'll carry on. The tenant improvement costs that you talked about vis-a-vis the rent for the Save on Foods. You had indicated that $23.50, I believe it was $23.50, included as well the tenant improvement costs for the fit up. What are those total tenant improvement costs? Because that is a 13-year lease, is it not?
That is. So I don't have the tenant improvement costs. It was more so the reason we didn't use the assessment department has used $17.50 based on their model. We've accepted that $17.50. The reason we didn't use the 23 was to account for the fact that there are fit up costs. I don't have those, what the exact amount is though.
Okay. I won't belabor that point then. The the cap rates that you have selected, I'm looking at your page 56 now. The community malls for properties, page 56 are all in Ontario with the exception of one in Lethbridge. The actual cap rate as noted on the first 3 properties is between 6 and 6.3%, but that's impossible to calculate with both the sale price as confidential and without knowing the NOI. So
the information we collect, so we collect all this information from CoStar. So CoStar is basically a third-party report. So they collect information on sales. And what they do is they reach out to the owners and ask these questions to the owners to find out what the actual capitalization rates are. So there unfortunately isn't a direct line of saying this is the purchase price, this is the net operating income. We've just collected this information from the third-party report. They've indicated this is the capitalization rate that was paid for the properties.
okay, so without knowing the source of their information or even their method of calculating by what you've just said, CoStar simply reports what they've been told without any supporting mathematical analysis? Is that?
Yes,
fair?
they'll reach out to they'll reach out to the purchaser and the seller, and they'll ask them what the capitalization rate is for the property that they bought. And then they report that, and then that's what they report on their analysis.
Okay. I'm not going to go into the appraisal report, except for one quick question. The appraisal report does a calculation similar to what you did and has arrived at a net operating income of $10,545,000 at page 188. Were you aware of that?
So again, as I've indicated, the appraisal report, they've used a slightly different approach. So they've stabilized over 3 years. So I can't speak to, I didn't put together the appraisal report.
Right.
So I can't speak exactly to what they've done. Really what we're looking at, and the intent of the report is to just show, hey, there's this report that came out. It came out just prior to the valuation date. The value is $131 million based on a third-party appraisal report. They've got their method of coming up with a value, and that value is $131 million. We have presented our method that we've used to come up with the value, and that's at 137 million. So we're not asking for the 131. It's just additional support to show you that there is a third party out there saying this is what the value would be based on their approach.
And on that note, different values of the NOI can be based on different calculations. That seems to follow naturally from what you've just answered. Would that be fair to say?
Absolutely. They're going to have their own approach of how to stabilize and how to treat the different rents. So absolutely.
Okay, thank you. I don't have anything further, Madam Chair.
Ms. Knight, do you have any questions?
I do. I just have to find the page number now that I was, shoot. I think it's pages 13 to 17 and 65 to 71. So if we go to page 13, why does it say without prejudice?
So this was the information we were given in terms of the valuation for the subject property. So the assessment department provided this as support for all the rents they used in their analysis. And it's the same information they provided in their brief as well.
But this is you putting on without prejudice. So why did you put on without prejudice?
We put it in so we could see how that value was derived. Again, in a situation where we're having these conversations about a value of the property, if we're negotiating, we wouldn't put that in. So certainly we have had conversations about the value of the property, but we're not going to be speaking about what was or wasn't talked about. But because this was about at the valuation that was based on the assessment of the 162 million, we felt it was appropriate. We didn't think that it was inappropriate to include because it's basically just breaking down that value.
Okay, that I had other questions, but they were answered, and so I'm good now. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, most of my questions have been answered as well. I just have a question regarding the cap rate. If you look at the, Colliers and the city's cap chart, and then some of the other outside, I can't remember what page you have. It's actually on the city's, on the city's brief, but although this might be in the lower range of some of those ranges that the outside organizations have been providing, it's still within the range. And I'm just wondering about the question of the amount of upgrades that have been, my question is the amount of upgrades that have been undertaken at Kildonan Place Mall in the last number of years, if that would not affect the cap rate in terms of it being at a slightly lower level than maybe some other malls. Again, we don't know the condition of the malls that you showed on some of your sales. They're not in Manitoba and they're fairly old, some of them. So I'm just wondering, the current condition of the mall, several new buildings, upgrades, just your comment on that.
Yeah, you bet. So I think when it comes to capitalization rate, Your point is well taken. There's not a lot of information, so we have tried to look at a variety of different ways to come up with a reasonable capitalization rate for the property. Looking at sales, looking at market reports, looking at as many factors as we can. So I think what we have to keep in mind is that the property has a significant number of gross rents and percent rents that are in the place. So roughly 96,000 square feet of space out of the building are occupied by tenants with gross or percent rents. I think as we take a look at that, and again, we're getting a little theoretical here, but as an investor, if you're taking a look at a property, you've got two properties. One, where all the properties in the
I understand all that because you have talked about that, and I
Right.
understand. My question was just about the current condition of the mall, in that it's had undergone a lot of renovation and has a lot of new anchor tenants, and that's my question. How do you see that? Not about the actual rents, but how do you see that affecting the cap rate?
I mean, we are obviously looking at the capitalization rate closer to 7%. When we talked to the owner, and had conversations with the owner and mentioned a sub 7% capitalization rate, they were really of the position that capitalization rate should be at minimum 7%. And when we take in consideration the fact that there is obviously the theater space that's not being used, there are future plans to continue to demolish portions of the building, change portions of the building. I think when we take a look at the fact that there's these functional obsolescence or functional obsolete components to the building, all of those pieces in place would suggest that we should be looking at a cap, in our opinion, on the higher end. So yes, they have refit or repurposed some of these older spaces to give them new life, whether that be the Cineplex or whether that be the Save on Foods or whether that be the Marshalls. But at the end of the day, these are still older buildings, and the property still has some challenges. So all told, we would still think that capitalization.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you.
I just
All
have
right.
one
Sure,
further
go ahead, yeah.
question, sorry.
Yeah.
With the change in the rent that you were talking about, does that change the total value?
Yeah, so if we implement the changes that we had said, we get working it through the math, so just making a change to the potential income, as discussed, we end up with a value of 139,261,000.
261, thank you.
Yeah, so it changes the net operating income. I can give you the net operating income. So that will change the net operating income to $9,588,662.
9 million, which?
$588,062.
Okay,
Okay,
so
thank you.
139,261 is the number you're asking for now.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to rebuttal evidence. So, Mr. Van Bruggen, that will be you first.
Excellent. Thank you
And
very
I'll
much, Madam
just
Chair.
let everybody pull that up.
And when we're ready, if we can turn to page 3, please.
Okay. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you. So, on page 12 and 13 of the city's brief, they provided comparables from both Polo Park and St. Vital Mall. And they're arguing that these would be comparable to what we are looking at for the subject property. However, when we take a look at one of the factors, so let's take a look at what the average sale is per square foot. We can actually see that average sale per square foot of Kildon for KP is about $552 a square foot in terms of average sales. When we take a look at Polo Park, we can see that that's a little over $1,000, so $1,032. And we take a look at St. Vital Mall, we can see that $647 a square foot. So again, when we take a look at the average sale per square foot, we can actually see that Polo Park has sales that are roughly 90% higher, and St. Vital Mall has sales that are 20% higher. So when we're in a situation where we're looking at these negotiations, getting a tenant in the property, certainly one of the important considerations or important components that's tracked are sales per square foot, and that's going to have an impact on what the rent rates they're going to get is. So I think it's very clear that the rental rates that someone's going to get at Polo Park will be different than what you're going to get at Kildonan Place. Again, it would be our same position that would hold for St. Vital Mall. So it'd be our position that the comparables from Polo Park and St. Vital Mall would not be appropriate comparables and not to be considered when looking at leasing from Kildonan Place. We provided that information there for the board's reference on the next couple pages. I apologize, the page numbers didn't come through just due to the formatting, but that information can be kind of found on pages 4 to 12 within the document. If the board will turn with me to page 13, please.
What is page 13? What does it?
So page 13, it should be starting 2 in rebuttal 2.
Okay, got it. Thank
and
you.
We do start with the page numbers again. So if you're looking at PDF, it should be page 13.
Oh, okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah. So in rebuttal to the supermarket rent comparables provided on page 16 of the city's brief, the Save On Foods was not a purpose-built grocery store, but rather a repurposed Sears. For that reason, it's our position that the cost of conversion would be fairly high, and that would result in a high tenant improvement for the space, which needs to be repaid. If the board will turn with me to page 14, when we take a look at the comparables, they've provided 860 St. James. So 860 St. James was a conversion of the former Future Shop. So similar situation. There was a significant conversion from the former Future Shop to the Save On Foods. Again, as these properties go through that conversion, there would have been a significant amount spent on tenant improvements to make that change. So when we take a look at that as a comparable, we feel there would be a difference there. So not a great comparison to be using when looking at what an appropriate rental rate would be. The board will turn me to page 15. So this is the next page over. The next comparable that the city was using was 400 North Town Road. Again, this is a situation where this is a new built building. So the building, we have provided 2 pictures there for the board. So one from 2015 and one from 2023. So as you can see, this was this building or this grocery store had only been recently developed. So again, there would have been additional costs with building that grocery store that would have been recouped through tenant improvements. So when we take a look at this, there's not really a great one-to-one on those tenant improvements as we take a look at it, because it wouldn't be really reflective of what the base rent would be because of the repayment of those tenant improvements. So again, as we take a look at that as a rent comparable, we have some concerns about that. Finally, when we take a look at the last comparable that was brought forward by the city. Oh, sorry, just give me 1 second here. So this would be this would be the property at 2575 Main. 2575 Main, this is a fairly old lease.
What page are you on? Sorry.
So at page 14 of the city's brief, they've got they've got their comparable at 2575 Main Street. This is a Sobeys.
You know what, Mr. Van Bruggen, I just have a question, and you can please proceed if you wish, but did you not agree with the rent on the grocery store?
We did, yeah. So we're just
Okay.
providing some
I'm just a little confused why we're going through all the comps then.
You bet. So we're just providing some explanation of. So we agreed with the $17.50. The city provided their rent comparables there, showing rents that are higher. We're providing some explanation of why the rents that are within the city's analysis would maybe not be as reflective of what the market rent that they're getting is. But I can skip over. So again, you're right. We're not disagreeing. We're just basically saying, hey, when we take a look at these leases, here's some other considerations to be considered.
Okay.
But I can move forward certainly for the board's reference. So starting on if we take a look on page 20. So starting on page 20, we have some information on tenant improvements. And just talking about how tenant improvements are recouped, how that works, how the landlord typically pays it, and then the tenant improvements are spread out and recouped over the term of the lease. So I won't go through that. It's more so just academic information there for the board's reference if there were questions about that. That continues on until page 27. If the board can turn with me to page 28, please. And just let me know when you're there.
I think we're all here, yep.
Excellent. So on page 28, so in rebuttal to the model versus actual rents, the assessor provided on page 25 and 26 of their brief. So on page 25 and 26, the assessor provided all of the rents from the property that were of the triple net lease or the net lease spaces, and they compared them to what the assessments are to show the fact that the property in reality is generating higher rents. So what we have done is we went through and we took a look at those rents and we split it out between older leases and newer leases to see how has leasing changed and does that have an impact. So what we can see here, and then grocery stores, because grocery stores we have seen higher TIs, as a result higher rental rates. So as we can see here on page 28, these are the older leases. So these leases were signed between 2012 to 2020. And when we take a look at these rents, we can see that yes, the actual rents are slightly higher than what the model rents are. However, if the board will turn with me to the next page, page 29. Page 29, when we take a look at the newer rents, we can actually see that's not the case. We can see that leases that were signed 2021, 22, and 23, they are lower on average than what we would see for the model. So if we can take a look, we can see the actual potential rent is $1,549,000, whereas the assessed rent is $1,621,000, so a little bit lower. Again, so part of the reason that the information on page 25 seems to be suggesting that the rents are higher is due to the fact that there are older leases there, and also because of some of the because of some of the jewelry store leases, which are quite high. So again, when we take a look at those are a bit of an outlier. Again, that is partly due to the tenant improvements that are put on that space. So that would be in rebuttal to that information on page 25 and 26. If the board moves with me to page 30. On page 30, similar exercise done for page 26 of the assessor's brief. So on page 26, the assessor has provided the rent rolls or the rents for the food court space. They've done a similar analysis where they've said, here are all the food court spaces. But yet when we split them out and we take a look at the older versus the newer rents, we can see that the newer leases are performing lower than what the older leases are. So again, it would be our position that yes, that might be if we take a look at all the rents, that might be the case. But if we look at the newer rents, we are showing that rents are coming in lower. Page 31. Similar analysis done for the kiosk space. Now in this one, we did take out the Virgin Plus. We do know that was signed in 2023, but the rent of $618 was a bit of an outlier when we consider everything else. But again, similar situation, similar analysis. When we look at the older versus the newer, again, we did see that the newer leasing is coming in lower. So again, supporting that position. And then starting on page 32. Page 32, we do have just some discussion in terms of what a typical lease would include. You can find that on page 34, including common area management fees or CAM fees, property taxes, and utilities. And again, this is just going back to the conversation that we had versus net versus gross leases to show the fact that when we have situations where we are looking at gross leases in a property, there is significant slippage in terms of what that revenue is going to be. With that, that concludes my rebuttal, and I welcome any questions from the board or from the assessment department. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Tanawara, do you have any questions?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Two questions.
Okay.
Do you understand why I'm putting a market rent comparables to my briefs?
Well, you provide the market rent comparables, and we are saying when we take a look at them is we are disputing on how comparable they are. So we're saying that the rents from Polo Park and the rents from St. Vital Mall are not comparable. And they should, they wouldn't be considered when we're looking at rents from the property.
Okay, you believe that subject property leases, analyzing only subject property leases would be significant enough to calculate the income value?
Not always, but I think when we take a look at the property, we can see
Is it-
there has been a significant number of leases that have been signed within the subject property, enough to give us a sense of what those spaces are renting for.
Yeah, do you remember I mentioned about those rent comparables only? This is not, I'm not comparing apple to orange. Polo Park, yes, it's significantly higher rental rates. Do you remember that? In my presentation, I mentioned about those things.
But then they wouldn't be comparable. So your title, the title that you have.
Rent comparables,
Rent.
market rent comparable.
Right. So
Market rent comparable.
rent comparables, and we're saying they're not comparable, because we're saying Polo Park is superior, we're
Okay.
saying San Vital Mall is superior, so that's not comparable.
Okay, then do you provide any rent comparables?
So yeah, we've provided a significant number of rent comparables when we've taken a look from the property itself, so.
It's
We
a
have-
property lease information.
Right, so the best indication, again, real estate is diverse. Each mall has its own areas that it's leasing to, so we have provided that information on starting on page 37 to page 40 of our brief. Looking at what recent leasing is from the property, and there has been quite a bit of it.
Okay, do you aware about the rent improvements, tenant inducements not considered for the Manitoba property valuation? It's when we do the income valuation here, we don't consider those ones.
Right, but I'm saying when we take a look at the rental rate that is being paid, it's two parts. It's the rent that's being paid to the landlord plus the recoupment of the tenant inducement. So when we take a look at that, that's why we didn't use the $23.50. We've used the $17.50, as we feel that's a better reflection of what the rent would.
Okay,
So we have accepted the city's $17.50.
do you have any? Do you agree my comparable showing it's because we put the $17 because of the market level of rent? Do you agree about that? Because all my rental rates within the $19, those kind of thing. Then you agree our $17.50. Sorry, within the market level, not considering tenant improvements or tenant inducements.
So we're not disputing the $17.50. We agree with the $17.50.
Yeah, that's the market level of rents.
Again, we're not disputing that.
That's all my questions.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Knight, do you have any questions?
I actually do not.
Mr. Mann, do you have any questions?
I do not either. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And I do not either. So, Ms. Tanawara, let's proceed with your rebuttal. Let's just
Okay.
get it up on our screens here.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. My presentation will be very short.
Hang on. Okay. Okay, has everybody got it?
Yeah.
Okay, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. My first 15 pages of the brief is showing about the cap rate, the properties he included for the cap rate analysis for the out of the province. The pictures, where it's located and what kind of shopping mall is that one? Regional shopping center. It's comparing the page 53. It's agent's brief, page 53. There is a list of the properties he used. Those are the pictures, and it's showing none of those are within the Winnipeg. All of those has a different characteristics and it's a different province. That's all in my page 1 to 15 pages. And page number 16 to up to page number 57. Those are the municipal board orders for the tenant inducements and tenant improvements and those kind of things. And also page 25 has a summary page about all the board orders we already have for the tenant leasing commission, tenant inducement, and tenant improvements. Do not use for income calculations. This is the summary page 25. Sorry, I missed something. Page 17 to page 23 is the municipal board order related to capitalization rate. Because this board order, very particularly speaking, I marked as a yellow, highlighted in yellow. It's a different cap rates for the individual income streams could be used for the calculation. That's all my presentation. Those are the information only for those ones. Kindly requesting consider those municipal board order when you consider valuation. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Van Bruggen, do you have any questions?
No questions, Madam Chair.
Okay, Mr. Mann, any questions?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Ms. Knight?
No, no, ma'am.
And I do not either. So I'm going to give you both the opportunity to summarize. So Ms. Tanawara, do you want to have any summation you'd like to make?
I would do the very small summation. All the considering all the information we provided, I'm kindly asking confirm the value as 162,335,000 as final value to Kildonan Place. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And Mr. Van Bruggen?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So the Manitoba Municipal Act indicates that at the hearing, the application, it's the assessor's responsibility to substantiate the assessed value of the evidence. So it's the assessor's responsibility to prove that the capitalization rate that's been used is reasonable, that the rent rate that's been used is reasonable, that the vacancy rate that's been used is reasonable. And we know this. As we take a look at the evidence, on the first point, which is the rental rate and the net operating income. Again, I think it's important for us to note that the assessment department has used a net operating income for this property at over $10 million. That value is, so you can find that information on their within their submission on page 24. They've got a net operating income of $10,378,000. When we actually take a look at what the income is for that property, it's just a little over $8 million, $8.6 million. So we can see there is already a substantial difference between what the assessed net operating income is and what the property is actually generating. So we have to ask ourselves, is the rental rate that's being applied by the city appropriate? We know that there's a number of gross leases and gross leases and percent rents within the property. Again, we know that they're not collecting operating costs. When we take a look at the financials, we can see that they're not collecting 2.2 million of those operating costs. Again, additional slippage. So is it appropriate? I guess the question is, does the shortfall adequately account for that, what they're not collecting? We know if we take a look at the shortfall the city is using is roughly about $800,000. Again, has that been supported to the board? And then finally, the capitalization rate. We know that there haven't been any sales of the regional malls. It was indicated that the capitalization rates that have been used were discussed, but we haven't seen any support for why those capitalization rates are appropriate. We've taken a look at both sales within the market, and we agree they're not from Winnipeg, but the larger market to see how are these properties transacting. We've taken a look at market reports. We've taken a look at leasing. All of these are suggesting to us that a capitalization rate of 7% is more appropriate, which coincidentally does fall within the line of what we're looking at for market reports. We are on the top side at 7%, but it's certainly within that range. The last consideration is we know that there is a number of gross leases. So would someone pay the same for this property versus a property that has full net rents? Again, we would feel that this would result in additional risk. And when we take a look at how interest rates have been changing over time, that would have an impact. All of those factors combined, it's our opinion that the assessed value for the property of the $1,062,335 is too high. We are requesting a value for that property. The adjusted value is $1,039,261,000, and we did provide that appraisal report there. And again, I acknowledge that the appraisal report is an appraisal report, but it does help to provide some additional third-party information showing the 131 million. So we're not asking for 131 million. but it is there to show a independent third party what that valuation is. And again, supporting the fact that the city's assessed value of 162 million for the property is too high. With that, MEP respectfully requests the board to adjust and reduce that assessment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I want to thank you both for, it was a long day for both of you, a lot of presenting and answering the questions. I want to thank you for taking the time to walk us through the information. And we have heard all the items scheduled at this hearing, and it is now adjourned.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
If we will-
Take care.